Number 10, Dark Claw. One of the coolest looking hero matchups to come out of the Amalgam universe in my opinion. The hero known as Dark Claw is a combination of Batman and Wolverine named Logan Wayne. Like our familiar Batman, Wayne witnessed his parents' murder at a young age and then was sent off to live with his uncle in Alberta. However, that did not last very long because his uncle was murdered as well and Wayne was sent to live in a home run by nuns. Once old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force alongside a man named Creed H. Quinn, and the two of them were submitted to the Weapon X program, aka the Canadian Super Soldier program. It was there that the Wolverine half of this character came to be, as it was here he learned of his metamutant powers and had his bones fused with adamantium. Quinn, however, was not so lucky because through the course of the experiments he grew more and more insane and would eventually become the Hyena, a combination of Sabretooth and the Joker and Dark Claw's greatest enemy. Equipped with the powers of Wolverine and the vast knowledge of Batman, Dark Claw is a truly awesome character, so check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1996's Marvel vs. DC, number 3. Number 9, Thomas Wayne. Turns out crime fighting is a genetic thing when it comes to the Wayne family. In the Flashpoint timeline, Bruce is actually the one who's murdered by the robber Joe Chill instead of his parents Thomas and Martha. Now as a result, for reasons similar to his son, Thomas Wayne took up a personal vendetta against crime that led him to taking up the mantle of Batman. But unlike his son, he is much more ruthless in his actions, as he is happy to kill any criminal that gets in his way. Equipped with the same genius intellect and hand-to-hand combat skills you would expect from any Batman, this version of the Caped Crusader has also been seen with multiple firearms, and also an Amazonian sword. Thomas secretly funds his war on crime through his business, Wayne Casinos, and thanks to this he's able to fight some of the most notorious villains Gotham's ever seen. One being his own wife, Martha Wayne, the Joker of this timeline. So if you're not familiar with the Flashpoint timeline, I highly recommend you take a look at some of the storylines it follows. So check out this grittier version of Batman for yourself in his first appearance in Flashpoint Volume 2, number 1, so you can fully understand why he considers himself to be a man with too much blood on his hands to be considered good. Number 8, Grim Knight. This version of Batman is from the Dark Multiverse and serves under the Batman Who Laughs as basically a gun for hire, acting as his second in command. In his timeline, Bruce's origin story is pretty much the same as his Prime Earth counterpart, however, he kills Joe Chill right after the murder of his parents when Chill drops his gun and gives him the opening. For the next several years, Bruce traveled the world honing his skills as an assassin and eventually returns to Gotham City to strike fear into the criminals' hearts as this universe's Batman. He has done some truly terrible things, such as making Jim Gordon watch as he made two highly explosive blimps crash into both Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Penitentiary, or when he tortured Mayor Harvey Dent with radiation until he was allowed to put up surveillance cameras all over Gotham. Sure, all that made Gotham a much safer place, but there was definitely a better method to it. With a full arsenal of weapons hid around the city of Gotham and on his person, the Grim Knight is truly merciless and not someone you want to mess with. First appearing in 2019's The Batman Who Laughs Volume 2, number 1, Grim Knight truly shows how dark a Batman who kills can be. Number 7, Damian Wayne. Now let's jump to a possible future here for a second and take a look at a version of Damian Wayne who took up the mantle of Batman in Bethlehem. In this possible future, Bruce Wayne retired as Batman and Dick Grayson took up the mantle. However, he was killed by some explosive Jokerfish and Damian stepped up to the plate as Batman. Unlike his father and Dick Grayson, Damian's Batman in this future is more willing to injure and kill opponents if he judges it necessary to do so, and this is pretty easy for him to do because he has always been pretty violent and definitely has the know-how to take down anyone and anything. Now, it's heavily implied that in this possible future, Damian made a literal deal with the devil, exchanging his soul for immortality and the healing abilities he felt he needed to protect Gotham. And he felt this had to be done because he couldn't measure up to his predecessors, being his father and Dick Grayson. Using the city of Gotham as a weapon itself by setting traps throughout it, we've seen this Batman go up against the likes of Two-Face in order to save a young Terry McGinnis, who he eventually takes under his Batwing, training him to become the next Batman. Why not check out this possible future for yourself in 2007's Batman number 666. Number 6, Batman 1 Million. In the far-off 853rd century, criminals and crime fighters are still very prevalent, and the most dangerous criminals are actually imprisoned on the planet Pluto and overseen by this new Batman. Their secret identity is not known, but we do know that he was one of the children that Zara forced to watch their parents' murder, and from that day on, he swore to never let such a tragedy happen again. They chose the symbol of the bat because he thought it stood for something more than just fear, stating it stood for justice and as an ideal. He studied for years on end, honing his fighting skills and knowledge in as many physical and mental techniques as possible, and all of that eventually paid off because he was eventually offered a position on the new incarnation of the Justice League alongside Superman and Flash 1 Million. After years of working together, they all went back in time to invite the Justice League of the 20th century to see the rebirth of the first Superman, Superman Prime. Much to their surprise, their companion Starman betrayed them and unleashed a plague onto Earth, and with the real Justice League being unable to stop them, Justice Legion Alpha stepped in to help them. Batman 1 Million worked with the 20th century Batman to find a way to stop Starman's plan, along with Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, using the technology of the Batcave, and together, they were able to stop his plan. ending with Starman returning to the light once more to stop what he had done. Give this storyline a read for yourself, starting with 1998's JLA number 23. Number 5. Owlman. Thomas Wayne Jr. from the Antimatter universe is the son of Thomas and Martha and older brother to Bruce. After his family's murder, he decided to take up the mantle of Owlman. However, unlike Batman, Thomas wanted to conquer the villains he went up with rather than just fight them. Thanks to his father's wealth that he was left as inheritance, Thomas underwent years of training and general enhancement so he could enact his plans of conquering Gotham's crime world. Alongside the other members of the Crime Syndicate, a group who is basically the evil version of the Justice League, they managed to establish and maintain control over a large portion of their Earth, even though they were up against other powerful organizations such as the Young Offenders and the Crime Lodge. Eventually, the Crime Syndicate began kidnapping people from the 52 multiverse matter-based worlds and were visited by our Justice League to retrieve the people from the Justice League Earth. Thomas, along with Superwoman and Ultraman, were banished to a prison subdimension while Johnny Quick and the current Power Ring were captured. Highly recommend you check out the storyline for yourself, so check out Owlman in his first appearance in 2000's JLA Earth 2. Number 4. Azrael. John Paul Valley, the genetically augmented assassin slash vigilante for the group known as the Order of St. Dumas. Now, I said genetically augmented because Valley was a test tube baby and his genetic structure was altered by scientists with an animal DNA which allows him to do the insane feats a normal human could only dream of. Originally an ally and even apprentice of Batman, Azrael was the one to adopt the Batman moniker following the Dark Knight's crippling defeat at the hands of Bane. However, he went insane for a short while during his run as the Caped Crusader and decided to augment the Batsuit so it was capable of causing some serious damage. It was very apparent early on that Azrael's Batman was of a very different breed because he was much more ruthless, okay with killing, and pretty much just wanted to punish the criminals rather than save any lives. Although he was doing a great job of cleaning Gotham City of its criminals, Bruce felt his methods were much too violent and irresponsible and personally removed him from the mantle after his full recovery, causing Valley to return to his identity as Azrael. Valley was presumably killed in a battle against his two greatest foes, Beast and Scratch, as he was shot through his armor by a multitude of Teflon bullets, and only his costume was recovered. 5 years later, another Azrael was created by the Order in ex-police officer Michael Lane. Check out John Paul Valley as both Azrael and Batman, starting with 1992's Batman Sword of Azrael, number 1. Number 3. Murder Machine. With an identical upbringing as the Batman we all know and love, Earth-44's Bruce Wayne ended up with one more tragic death in his life, the murder of his butler, Alfred. Blaming himself for Alfred's death, Bruce enlisted the help of Cyborg to create the Alfred Protocol, a powerful AI and hologram with the intent of keeping Bruce safe at all times. Within one day, the Alfred Protocol had executed all of the criminals in Arkham Asylum as he deemed them a threat to Bruce. Eventually, Bruce started to doubt his ability to keep himself safe and relied very heavily on the AI Albert, having him remove his ability to feel fear and sadness and replace his body with a mechanical one that would never ever fail him. This was the birth of the Murder Machine and thus began the Earth's demise. Like the other members of the Dark Knights, Murder Machine represents one of Batman's many fears and aspects of his life. This one in particular represents his fear of not being as self-sufficient as he thinks, his father-son relationship with Alfred, and the regret of cutting off other people. Check them out in their first appearance in 2017's Dark Days, the casting, number 1. Number 2, The Batman Who Laughs. Obviously, this twisted Batman had to make an appearance on this list today. However, he is not at number 1 because there are definitely some darker Batman out there. Hailing from the dark multiverse, we have Earth-22's Bruce Wayne, also known as the Batman Who Laughs. After an all-out assault from Joker against Gotham, Bruce completely loses it and snaps the Joker's neck, which causes a mysterious gas to leak from the Joker's mouth into Bruce's body. This led to the mad descent of Bruce's sanity and his transformation into the Joker-Batman hybrid known as the Batman Who Laughs. With the abilities of the Joker and Batman combined, alongside the Jokerized Robins known as Groblins or Dark Robins, the Batman Who Laughs assembled the darkest and most twisted versions of Batman across the dark multiverse and created the Dark Knights in order to wreak havoc on the world. In the events of Dark Knight Death Metal, he is seemingly killed by Wonder Woman's new Chainsaw of Truth, but I highly doubt this is the last we will ever see of him. So check him out for yourself in his first appearance in Dark Days, the casting, number 1. And finally, at number 1, we have Batman Earth 43. Now, not a whole lot is known about this Batman's life prior to his introduction, but it can be assumed that it was similar to the Batman origin we're all familiar with. You know, parents' death leads to training, leads to becoming Batman and fighting the likes of the Joker, the Riddler, etc. After discovering that the most famous vampire, Dracula, is still alive and operating in Gotham City, Bruce realizes that his recent dreams were the result of him being visited by Tanya, another vampire who was once under Dracula's control. Tanya had actually been biting Bruce but hadn't been taking any of his blood. She was instead infusing him with vampiric powers without destroying his humanity. Thanks to these new powers, Batman now possessed some incredibly enhanced senses, super strength, and more alongside his immense knowledge of hand-to-hand combat. With enough power to now kill Dracula, Batman confronts and kills him by impaling the vampire on a tree. However, this win came at a serious cost because Dracula was able to completely drain Batman of all his blood, effectively completing his transformation into a vampire. Fast forward a little bit and we see our vampiric Batman put into a coma thanks to a stake to the heart after his bloodlust and rage causes him to drain the Joker of all his blood. Alfred eventually awoke his master later on because Gotham City was overrun with criminals. However, this was a pretty bad idea because all he did was hunt down his enemies, both new and old, so he could just drain them of all their blood and kill them. He is eventually killed after he walks into the sunlight, hoping he can finally pay for what he did and have some peace, but he is revived once more later on in the search for Ray Palmer, Red Rain. Number 10, the Aquaman. First on our list today is Arthur Curry of the Wildstorm universe. Now I know you're probably thinking, how different could this Aquaman really be if he has the same name and still goes by Aquaman? Well, let me tell you, when I found out about him, I was truly shocked. Arthur, like his main counterpart, still has all his undersea abilities, but instead he gained them by genetically splicing his DNA with that of sea life so that he could, get this, terrorize and demand human sacrifices from a local fishing village. Now these genetic mutations gave him not only the ability to survive underwater and traverse the aquatic terrain with ease, but it also gave him superhuman strength, a ridiculously scary physique, and claws just for that little extra intimidation factor. Now why would he do this, you ask? Well, like I said, one of the reasons was so he could terrorize innocent villagers, but apparently the main reason is that he was so obsessed with his family's supposed heritage, believing himself to be the true king of the sea. What a nut job. Check out his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2018's Wildstorm, Michael Cray, number 4. Number 9, Aqua Beast. Born to a fairly wealthy family, Peter Dudley was a spoiled playboy who one day had a chance encounter with Aquaman and Mera while he was out yachting, and, you know, as one does. He immediately fell in love with Mera, who was not interested in him for, you know, obvious reasons, so Dudley set out to beat Aquaman at his own game so he could win Mera's love. He hired a scientist named Dr. Hans Ludorf and told him to recreate Aquaman's powers, only stronger. Dr. Hans tried to comply, but something in the process went wrong and Dudley became a hulking monstrosity with at least twice Aquaman's superhuman strength and the ability to breathe underwater. Now dubbing himself Aqua Beast, Peter Dudley attacked Aquaman and kidnapped Mera. Whether or not Aquaman could have defeated Dudley in his Aqua Beast form remains a mystery, however, because Dudley and Mera were then attacked by Hamuri, an extraterrestrial from an unspecified aquatic planet who had come to Earth plotting a global conquest. Hamuri and Dudley fought, and in the course of the battle both fell into a tidal whirlpool from which neither one was able to escape from. Check out Dudley in 1967's Aquaman, number 34. Number 8, Orm Marius. The half-brother of Aquaman and also his greatest enemy, Orm Marius, aka the Ocean Master, appeared pretty early on in Orm's career as Aquaman. Over anything else, Ocean Master desires the throne of Atlantis, and he's done some pretty maniacal things to try and get it. Adopting the identity of human businessman Orm Marius, Ocean Master built a private fleet and attempted to plunder New Marine City, a construction project on the Gotham City waterfront using his half-brother Aquaman, who he had hypnotized as, you know, some muscle. Aquaman was freed from Orm's influence by Batman and driven from Gotham. Aquaman prevented Commissioner Gordon from killing Orm because he desired to bring his brother back to justice himself. Wondering why I'm considering Orm to be a dark alternate version of Aquaman? Well, it's because in one of the last settings of this villain, he has used his mystical talents to alter reality so that he was Aquaman, and Orm was Ocean Master. As Aquaman, Orm held Sub Diego under his evil rule, however the heroic Ocean Master was able to defeat him, of course. Check out Ocean Master's story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1966's Aquaman, number 29. Number 7, Thanatos. Meant to be a dark reflection of Aquaman, Thanatos comes to us from an other dimensional realm known as Netherspace that is kind of reverse purgatory, where beings known as the Others keep entities until they are filled with sufficient evil to be returned to the New Earth dimension. Only coming out of this dimension to lure victims into his world so that he could steal their identities, one day he decided that it was time to go for the big guns, and he lured Aquaman to his mirror by sending him a message from Aqualad, asking to meet in the abandoned house the mirror resided in. Satisfied with the powerful identity, Thanatos kept Aquaman's form, but was eventually banished back to the Netherspace for, you know, obvious reasons. We see Thanatos return once more. This time it was when Aquaman found his way to the Netherspace as he was in search of Mera. Aquaman and Thanatos engaged in a final battle in which Aquaman is the victor, of course, but he refuses to kill Thanatos, and the others see this as a weakness and a lack of evil. They deem Aquaman unready to leave, but during the battle, Thanatos proved himself to be filled with sufficient evil, and they allowed him to return to the New Earth universe where he could continue to live as Aquaman. Check out the rest of his story for yourself, starting with 1970's Aquaman, number 54. Number 6. King Proximus. One of many corrupt Atlanteans, Proximus was one of the worst, conspiring to straight up eliminate Aquaman for being the chosen hero. Proximus summoned Aquaman back to Poseidonus under the pretext of investigating a series of bizarre explosions taking place outside the city. When the two went to investigate, Proximus pushed Aquaman into the path of the spiraling vortex, sending him backwards through time like 2,500 years. Returning to Atlantis, Proximus assumed Aquaman's appearance and told everyone that the real Proximus had died in the explosions. With Aquaman's reputation, he was able to do pretty much anything and everything. However, he was eventually taken down by Aquaman after he returned to the present alongside Aqualad. A short time later, Proximus conspired with a pirate named Captain Clay, and together they lured a pack of sea monsters to attack Atlantis. While Aquaman and Aqualad were distracted trying to keep the creatures away from the populated areas, Proximus took advantage of the situation and staged a coup against the Atlantean king Stamar. His first official act as the newly crowned king was to imprison Aquaman and Aqualad. However, this didn't really last too long because our heroes were able to dethrone him and take him down. Check out his 4-issue run for yourself, starting with the 1962's Aquaman, number 3. Number 5. Aquadus. Hailing from Earth 9, Dr. Aquadus was once a scientist of the Svitavi Collective, which was the company that was the lead designer of the Red Tornado warhead. After the completion of the Red Tornado, he decided it was time to work on another experiment, which was learning to teleport living tissue. This turned out to be, not the best idea though, because the experiment led to an accident that bonded Aquadus to a nearby lake that transformed his entire body into water. This had its perks though, because now he had the ability to control and manipulate pretty much every body of water, so I guess it wasn't all bad. Dubbing himself Aquaman from that point on, he shifted his eyes onto world domination, doing so by crafting a super gun that would destroy Earth's moon and allow him to completely harness the raw power of all the water on Earth. His plot was soon discovered by 6 heroes: the Atom, Flash, Joker, Manhunter, Plastic Man, and Spectre, and the heroes put a stop to Aquadus's plan, in which he was obliterated from the exploding backlash caused by his destroyed super gun. Check out his story in 1997's Tangent Comics Secret 6, number 1. Number 4. Underwater Man. On Earth 10, the history of not only the planet, but many of our superpowered friends is a bit different from what you might expect. On this Earth, Superman, known as Overman, crash landed as a baby in Germany instead of Kansas, and the Germans used him to win World War II and basically take over the whole world. And, along with an evil Superman, obviously comes an evil version of the Justice League known as the New Reichman. On this evil team is an Atlantean known as Underwater Man, and he is basically Aquaman in every way, shape, and form, because the two share all of their powers. However, the biggest difference is that, this version is, evil. Underwater Man is a firm believer in the World War II era Germanic thinking, and he truly thought that Atlantis was the birthplace and root of the Aryan race, so that's why he aligned himself with the New Reichman. Eventually though, and thankfully, Overman realized that what they were doing was wrong, and he leaked some precious information to the Freedom Fighters that resulted in the demise of not only the New Reichman, but Metropolis as well. Check out Underwater Man in his first appearance in 2015's The Multiversity Master Men, number 1. Number 3. The Drowned. Coming to us from Earth -11, one of the many Earths from the Dark Multiverse, is Bryce Wayne. Bryce became the Batwoman of her universe after her father, Martin Wayne, was murdered in an alley. So, pretty standard Batman stuff. Later, she became romantically involved with Sylvester Kyle, who was also murdered, and this set Bryce on a mission to kill every last metahuman around. And then, after 18 months, she succeeded after killing Aquawoman with her own trident. Now, in retaliation, the Atlanteans submerged all of Gotham and some part of the world in water. But Bryce, after many augmentations to her body and with Aquawoman's trident, was able to conquer the Atlanteans and submerge the rest of her world in water. Now, like all of the Dark Knights under the Batman Who Laughs, the Drowned represents one of Batman's fears. This one being the fear of going too far in the fight against superhumans, his love for Catwoman, and his inability to trust anyone but himself. Check her story out for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2017's Dark Days, The Casting, number 1. Number 2. Sea King. From Earth 3, an alternate reality that was supposedly said to be the birthplace of true evil. Now on this Earth, nobody cares about right or wrong, they only care about strength and having power. So the weak are annihilated and only the strong live on. This is where Sea King comes in, the evil version of Aquaman who is a member of the Crime Syndicate, aka the Evil Justice League. Sea King, along with the rest of the Crime Syndicate, escaped the destruction of their native Earth by using a portal created by the Outsider to travel to our prime Earth. Unfortunately, Sea King did not survive the journey and immediately died the moment he exited the portal. The Syndicate dumped their fallen comrade in the middle of the ocean. However, after sinking to the bottom, Sea King suddenly awoke for, some unknown reason. During the Crime Syndicate's initial attack, Deadman entered the lifeless Sea King's body for protection, and by entering, he no longer knew who he was and began attacking his team when they came looking for him. John Constantine was able to break Sea King's hold on Deadman, though he locked him in the body, seeing it as useful in their plans to defeat the Crime Syndicate. Check out Sea King for yourself, starting with 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23. Number 1. Emperor Aquaman. Now, just checking, have I mentioned how much I love the Flashpoint timeline? No? Not enough, you say? Well, perfect, because next on our list is Orin of the Flashpoint timeline, otherwise known as Emperor Aquaman. Now, if you're not familiar with one of the sickest timelines in DC, basically what happened is Barry Allen went back in time to prevent the death of his mother. But doing this had some pretty severe consequences as it rewrote all history and created a new timeline. In this timeline, Orin was brought back to Atlantis when he was a teenager due to the death of his grandfather. As a result, the young Arthur never learned compassion and kindness from his father, who was killed by the Atlantean agent sent to recover him. Fast forward to the present day and we see Atlantis in an all-out war against the Amazons because Wonder Woman killed Mira, his wife, in retaliation to having her mother killed. Aquaman caused Western Europe to sink into the sea, killing over 60 million people, intending to also sink England and the rest of the world as well. His full plan never gets realized though because a final battle is waged between Emperor Aquaman and Wonder Woman. However, they're both approached by the Flash and the rest of the heroes who are there to stop the war for good. Check out his full story starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, Number 1. That'll be it for this video, everyone. If I happen to miss one or more of your favorite dark alternate versions of Aquaman, let it be known in the comments below, and honestly, who knows, maybe you'll see them pop up on a continuation of this list. Number 10, Symbiote Spider-Man. Obviously, we have to start off this list with a classic. Introduced in 1989's What If Volume 2 Number 4, we're given a glimpse into the life of Earth 1089's Peter Parker after his suit bonded with the Venom symbiote. In this reality, the symbiote couldn't be removed from Peter Parker even though the Fantastic Four and other heroes tried using a combination of magic and science. It ended up taking over Peter's mind and body, feeding off his adrenaline, causing him to age at a very rapid rate. Once his body couldn't sustain the symbiote any longer, it used him to possess superheroes like Hulk and even caused the death of a few others. Free from the symbiote's control, it's then revealed that Peter Parker has now aged to 85 with not a whole lot of time left. He was later found dead by Mr. Fantastic, surrounded by research on how to kill the symbiote that he was once bonded to. Although it was out of his control, Symbiote Spider-Man was considered even worse than Venom, one of the most sadistic villains in the Marvel Universe, and unfortunately he never really got that redemption. Number 9, Peter Parker, Earth 9591. Now we're all familiar with the origin story of Peter Parker, you know, spider bite leads to powers, leads to the birth of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but have you ever wondered what it would look like if things took a bit of a different turn after that spider bite? Well, wonder no longer, because in 1995's Ruin Number 2, we're actually introduced to a different Peter Parker who isn't so lucky. After being bitten by the radioactive spider, Peter develops a total of 0 powers and is instead infected with a mutant virus that ultimately leads to his death. This Earth never gets the chance to meet the hero Spider-Man, and instead they're given a rash and scar-covered Peter Parker who was forced to live the remainder of his life in quarantine so he wouldn't infect anyone else. You know, I always wondered what would happen like realistically after that spider bite, but man, I really didn't think it would be that dark. Number 8, Ghost Spider. Now, this is one of my favorite costumes in the Spider-Man PS4 game, so you know I had to add it to the list. On Earth 11,638, Peter's Uncle Ben wasn't ever murdered and actually helped him hone his skills as the Amazing Spider. Despite this, he doesn't always use his abilities and intellect for good, and thanks to the resources from his lab, Parker Technologies, the Amazing Spider found a way to bring over other Spider-Men from different universes and absorb their powers. After bringing Earth 616 Peter Parker into his universe, the Spider is convinced by him that what he's been doing isn't heroic at all. Then, when Ben is about to absorb Earth 616 Peter's powers, we see the Spider stand in the way and instead had his powers absorbed, putting his body into a comatose state and trapping his spirit in hell. Following the Sorcerer Supreme's fight with the Infernal Hulk, we see Peter given a second chance at life after he was infused with the spirits and powers of the Repentant Damned. Now possessing powers similar to Ghost Rider along with his Spidey powers, he awakes from his coma as the Ghost Spider and uses his second chance to correct some of the mistakes he's made already. Check him out in his first appearance in 2011's Amazing Spider-Man Annual Number 38. Number 7, Superior Spider-Man. Following an insane life that deserves a read if you're not familiar with it already, Otto Octavius transplanted his mind into the body of Peter Parker, leaving Peter in his body. Still retaining Peter's memories, he was able to trick all of Peter's loved ones into thinking nothing was wrong. Otto believed that he could be a better Spider-Man and, following the death of Peter Parker, took up the role as the Superior Spider-Man, upgrading the spider suit to better fit his needs. Many battles ensued, and then it's revealed along the way that Peter's consciousness still lived on inside his body, and after the Goblin King kidnapped Anna Maria, Otto's love interest while in Peter's body, Otto begins to hesitate to save others as he has a chance to save her and doubts he can save everyone without having time to plan. Peter's consciousness pushes him to save the child who is also in danger at the same time, and Otto realizes that Peter is more deserving of the role of Spider-Man and completely erases his consciousness so that Peter can take control of his body once more and save everyone. He sacrificed himself for the girl he loved and the man he hated for the greater good, and that just goes to show you that even if you start off as a villain, you can change and become a hero. Now, there's a lot more to the story that I had to gloss over or skip, So I highly recommend you check out the story for yourself, starting with The Amazing Spider-Man number 697. Number 6, Doppelganger. The evil, pretty much mindless duplicate of Spider-Man from Earth 616, this version of Spider-Man was created by Magus during the Infinity War. Although he was killed during the Infinity War, this 6-armed Spidey clone was later revived by the Demogoblin, becoming its pet for a while. Doppelganger appears a few more times after the aftermath of the Infinity War, teaming up with Carnage, Shriek, Carrion, and the Demogoblin during the infamous Maximum Carnage killing spree, and then is later seen as part of the Spider Army to help defeat Morlun and the other Inheritors. Unfortunately for him, after many adventures, the Doppelganger was eventually captured and imprisoned in the rebuilt Ravencroft. Possessing many of the same powers as the original Spider-Man, what really sets Doppelganger apart is his raw strength. Being able to lift up to 25 tons as opposed to the normal 10 that most other Spider heroes can lift. Why not check him out for yourself in Infinity War number 1.
Number 5. Tony Stark from Earth 2122. Now, there isn't a whole lot known about this version of Iron Man, but from what we do know, he's pretty dark compared to the original. For instance, he kills innocent people. Yeah, okay, that is something the original Tony would not do. Yeah, he has killed people, but not innocent people. I mean, at least not intentionally. In this world, the British won the American Revolution and control North America. And in this world, Tony is a part of the group called the Sons of Liberty. Number 4, Zombie Iron Man. So in the comic series Marvel Zombies, Iron Man is, well, the zombie. He attacks Silver Surfer at one point, but then is sliced in half by one of Silver Surfer's energy blasts. Since he is a zombie, he's not dead. He ends up eating some of the Silver Surfer's body and gains some of his abilities. With just gaining these new powers, and with the arrival of Galactus, Iron Man and some others fly up and eat Galactus. Yep, they straight up eat him. They gain his powers and form a group, the Galacti. Number 3, Iron Patriot, the comic version. So, in the comics, the government wants Norman Osborn to basically recreate the Avengers team. Yeah, you heard that right. Friggin' Norman Osborn. So he creates the Dark Avengers, and leads it as the Iron Patriot. Basically a combination of Iron Man, but with Captain America's colors. Now, the MCU did a version of the Iron Patriot, but they did their own spin and made Rhodey the Iron Patriot, and he did work for the government. Eventually, the Dark Avengers declare war on Asgard. Asgard is currently just hovering over a spot of land on Earth. With the siege of Asgard underway, Norman wants to use Sentry's evil side, Void, as a secret weapon to take the Asgardians down. He manipulates Sentry to allow Void to take over his body, and in the end, Norman is imprisoned on the raft. But, you know, he never stays there for very long. Number 2, Iron Maniac. Iron Maniac is from an alternate universe, Earth 5012 to be exact. In this world, almost all of the other Avengers were killed by a Super Skrull. Also in this world, Tony became more and more crazy as time went on, with a lot of it happening because of the loss he experienced. In this world, he also ended up becoming obsessed with Reed Richards, who he believed was becoming too power hungry. Tony became more unhinged, even killing that world's Black Widow and Wolverine. But that's not all, folks. He then took on the Fantastic Four and killed Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, after Johnny permanently scarred Tony's face. Reed eventually found a way of stopping him by sending him to another Earth, the main Earth, Earth 616. Number 1, Ultron, MCU version. So in the MCU, Ultron is created by, you guys guessed it, Tony Stark. After the events of the first Avengers, Tony is still dealing with the trauma of that alien invasion. He wants to make sure that if there is ever another attack, the world will be prepared. So, Tony starts the Ultron program, using the Mind Stone from Loki's scepter. At first, they just look like variations of armor that Tony has worn in the past, but controlled with his AI, basically to protect Earth against any threats to it. But Ultron deems the human race as the greatest threat against Earth, so instead of protecting the humans, he's going to wipe them out. Yeah, that's kind of dark. He was doing this initially with assistance from Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, but Ultron's plan was coming together. His second form was made from vibranium. His plan was to lift up a city in Sokovia and allow it to come crashing down like a meteor to wipe out humanity. Obviously, the Avengers were able to stop him, and he was destroyed by Vision in the end. Number 10, Old King Phoenix Thor. So some people say that this would probably be the most powerful version of Thor. And oh boy, it's probably true. Imagine Thor with his own powers, but also the power of the Phoenix Force. That's when you get Old King Phoenix Thor, who just also looks really, really cool. This Thor is a lot older and wiser, but ends up getting defeated by Wolverine, who was harnessing the power of the Phoenix Force. But then Wolverine ends up getting killed by Dr. Doom, and it is given to Thor. And I mean, the rest is history. Number 9, Rogue Thor. Okay, so this version of Thor comes from Marvel's What If series. Something a lot of fans will become a lot more familiar with because they're making a Disney Plus series about it, with MCU characters, which will actually be really cool. So, this one tells the story about what if Rogue, the X-Men, had the powers of Thor. In this story, Rogue ends up killing Thor by absorbing his powers and then kind of goes evil. I mean, she goes on a killing spree, killing a lot of people. It's not all bad though. She doesn't stay evil forever. I mean, the spirit of Thor eventually convinces her to use her powers for good, and she does. But come on, she went crazy, and it happened, but just not in the main continuity, of course, because that would just be really, really dark. Number 8, Frost Giant Thor. Okay, so Frost Giant Thor comes from Marvel's What If series, and during it presents the idea of what would have happened if Odin got killed by Laufey and raised Thor himself. Loki and Thor still are not really close in this version, but Loki's kind of the good guy. He wants to leave and go to Earth, but Thor doesn't want that and tries to stop him, and he accidentally ends up killing his mother, Frigga. Thor is devastated by what he's done and ends up letting Loki go, and Loki lives a nice life on Earth. I mean, it's pretty dark for Thor, but at least Loki got a happy ending this time. Number 7, Hellbound Thor. Hellbound Thor isn't from Marvel's main Earth. He comes from Earth 5113, or also known as the Dormammu-verse, which is named after, yes, Dormammu from Doctor Strange. In this universe, Dormammu is the ruler and has turned Thor, plus a lot of other famous Marvel heroes, into his minions, who will do anything for him. They all have new looks, and this version of Thor is very, very different. He's like really straight up scary. Yeah, he wasn't a big part of this story, so there's not a lot of information about him. But look-wise, he has his classic suit, but with a demon face, but he has all of his normal powers. Number 6, Thorion. Sometimes Marvel and DC cross over. It happens, and one time they did, some of their heroes worked together. This was the case with Thor and Orion, to form Thorion. He was super powerful, and get this, he is the son of Thanoside. That's Thanos and Darkseid merged together. Like, that's so cool, and is probably the scariest villain combo you could ever have. But this isn't technically canon, it's in its own universe, but it was pretty cool to see. And it's always a treat whenever Marvel and DC decide to work together. Hopefully we see more of it in the future.
Number 5, Captain Mar-Vell. Hailing from Earth 1610, or better known as the Ultimate Marvel Universe, we have Jihanaris Halasun Mar-Vell, the Ultimate Captain Marvel. As a member of the Kree race, he underwent massive nanosurgery to appear human, going undercover as the physicist Dr. Philip Lawson to investigate the human race. Growing fond of humans, Vell joined S.H.I.E.L.D.'s ACES program to speed up humanity's progress to the stars. Thanks to his cyber surgery, Vell is able to change between his original form and human forms, and he can actually be changed out of this against his will into his original form if the cybernetics are tampered with in some way, but this issue can be resolved by itself with time, or he can resolve it. It just depends on how bad it is. Well, in his battlesuit, like the other Captain Marvels, Vell is capable of flight and can create energy shields when needed. Now, like many of the alternate Captain Marvels, he doesn't stick around for too long, as during the launch of a space mission in Cape Canaveral, Mar-Vell received information that part of the Galactus Swarm had arrived on Earth. He fought the Swarm in Bermuda and found himself allied with the Silver Surfer and Nova. When Galactus targeted the Kree homeworld Hala, Captain Mar-Vell fought the creature until he was grievously injured by the Swarm. He died of his injuries on Hala and has not been revived or seen since. Check him out in his first appearance in 2005's Ultimate Secret #1, and let me know what you think of the character in the comments below. Number 4, Noh-Varr, or Marvel Boy. A member of the Kree race in an alternate reality, Noh-Varr is the son of Captain Glory and Star Splendor. His DNA is actually interesting and adds a weird layer to his character because it was altered with cockroach genes to include some insect properties like wall crawling and super hearing thanks to a membrane that covers his skin. With the powers you would expect from the Kree race such as super strength, speed, agility, and durability, Varr was also injected with nanobots, allowing him to extend his fingernails and create bombs out of them. As a member of the 18th Kree Diplomatic Gestalt and the Young Avengers, we have seen Varr go up against some terrifying villains across the galaxy, such as some major Skrull impersonators and Kang the Conqueror. In his most recent appearance, the Guardians of the Galaxy recruited Marvel Boy in order to stop the mad gods known as the Olympians. Together they decided their best hope was to use his pocket battlefield to destroy Olympus' engine. Nova and Phyla Vell would distract Zeus while Moondragon would hide their presence to accomplish this. However, Artemis and Hermes discovered them, derailing their plans. When Hermes attacked Moondragon, Marvel Boy incapacitated the distracted god, and now we're kind of left waiting to see what happens next. But in the meantime, why not familiarize yourself with Marvel Boy, starting with his first appearance in 2000's Marvel Boy Volume 2, #1. Number 3, Carol Danvers. Now hopefully we all know who this version of Captain Marvel is, as she has been around for a while now and has played a big role in a decent amount of storylines for Marvel. Born to Marie and Joe Danvers, Carol is a half Kree, half human, all-powerful woman who you do not want to mess with. As Captain Marvel, she possesses an incredible amount of powers, including but not limited to flight, super strength, energy manipulation, and even has some regenerative powers. Before becoming Captain Marvel, she was a part of the Air Force and intended to become a pilot. However, after she obtained her powers from Mar-Vell after the Psyche Magnetron fuses her DNA to his, awakening her latent Kree powers, she pretty much becomes a hero full-time, and well, the rest is history. As a member of the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, Alpha Flight, and more, this Captain Marvel is a serious badass, and I would not recommend getting on her bad side. Now, I'm sure we all know where to find Carol Danvers, but just in case, check her out in her first appearance in 1968 Marvel Superheroes number 13, or if you'd rather see her on the big screen, check out Brie Larson in her portrayal of the character in the Captain Marvel movie. Another one that I haven't seen yet. Number 2, Phyla Vell. The daughter of Mar-Vell and brother to Genis Vell, Phyla Vell is an insanely powerful being. Having previously destroyed and recreated the universe, she was the second artificially created offspring of Captain Mar-Vell, was created by her mother Elysius in the new universe because her first attempt, Genis Vell, had been so successful. Thanks to her Kree/eternal hybrid physiology, she possesses superhuman levels of strength, speed, and endurance, and on top of that, she has vast cosmic awareness and is able to manipulate the quantum zone force to do basically whatever she wants. Throughout her run in the Marvel Universe, she has been seen fighting in conflict with some ridiculously powerful beings such as Annihilus, and even her own brother Genis Vell when he went insane and she tried to take over the mantle of Captain Marvel. Later on, we see her join Star-Lord's New Guardians of the Galaxy alongside Marvel Boy, Moondragon, and Rocket Raccoon, where she eventually agrees to become the new Avatar of Oblivion. Now known as Martyr, she was much more aggressive than ever before, and unfortunately, that led to a bunch of events that made up her death. In her final moments, she heads towards the cocoon expecting Magus to be inside. However, before her very eyes, a resurrected Thanos emerges from it, killing her and sending her off to hell. Now, if you're interested in this character, check her out in her first appearance in 2004's Captain Marvel Volume 5, number 16. And finally, number 1, we have Genis Vell. After falling out with Captain America, Rick Jones found himself mentally drawn to a pair of extraterrestrial golden bracelets known as the Negabands. With those bands, his atoms joined together with that of the original Captain Mar-Vell, and they lived together in a shared existence. Captain Mar-Vell unfortunately perished from incurable systematic cancer, and as Rick slowly began to move on with his life, eventually getting married, Mar-Vell's love, Elysius, felt more alone than ever. Using Titanian science, Elysius sampled some of Mar-Vell's genetic structure to conceive a child, Genis. To protect him from Captain Marvel's enemies, Genis was artificially aged to maturity and taken to an isolated world where he could be safe from any harm. Now, upon discovering his true lineage, Genis donned the Negabands worn by his father and was determined to carry on his father's heroic traditions. With all the powers of his father before him, coupled with his vast cosmic awareness and ability to interact with his alternate selves, Genis is arguably the most powerful Captain Marvel to date. During his time with the Thunderbolts, Genis' powers seemed to rage out of control to the point where his Negabands were actually absorbed into his body, and he was continuously drawing more and more energy into himself, and he got to the point where he was so powerful that Zamo used the Moonstones to kill Genis by sending his body parts into separate parts of the Dark Force dimension so that they could never be rejoined. Now, obviously I did have to skip over a lot of cool stuff when it came to this character, so why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1993's Silver Surfer Annual number 6.
And at 10, Trigger Twins. The moniker of the Trigger Twins was originally used by Walt and Wayne Trigger, two cowboy heroes from the Old West. Tad and Tom Trigger also called themselves the Trigger Twins while working as criminals in Gotham City. However, Oliver Queen was enlisted as a Trigger Twin in the second part of the Elseworlds crossover event on the CW. In the Arrowverse, the Trigger Twins are a notorious criminal duo created in the second alternate reality created by Dr. John Deegan using the Book of Destiny, given to him by the Monitor. While technically not really the Green Arrow, Diaz as a cop calls Oliver by his actual name, thus making it good enough for me. The Trigger Twins were the most feared criminals in Central City. They became the CCPD's #1 priority after a bank robbery spree. So, they were criminals before I guess they were awoken, when, you know, they swapped into that reality. This change happened at the end of Arrow's part of the crossover, Part 2, and Supergirl's Part 3. And at 9, Dark Archer. Malcolm Merlyn is a bow-wielding assassin who serves as the archenemy to the Green Arrow, but has also gone up against the likes of the Black Canary, obviously, and Batman. The character also made his live-action debut in 2012 with the first season of Arrow. Before becoming the Green Arrow, Oliver Queen was inspired to take up archery by the exploits of Oliver King, aka Malcolm the Magician, who was a master archer with acute accuracy. Merlyn later challenged the Green Arrow to a public duel Angel and wrecked him. After that, Merlin vanished and became a member of the League of Assassins, a plot point that would later be worked into the show. The Green Arrow came face to face with the Dark Archer again when he tried to assassinate Batman. GA managed to intercept Merlin's arrow, hitting it with one of his own. Merlin admitted that GA had improved, but then he escaped before getting caught. While not being a version of Oliver Queen, Merlin is sure meant to be a dark reflection of the witty and humorous Green Arrow that we know from the comics, and that's enough to land him a spot on this list. And at 8, Flashpoint. The Flashpoint version of Green Arrow isn't really a bad guy per se, but he is definitely a dark alternate version. In the Flashpoint timeline, Oliver Queen is the head of Green Arrow Industries, a military contracting company a la Tony Stark. He has a team known as the Green Arrows who are all ex-military who serve as his backup when acquiring new equipment. Oliver Queen is an inventive genius, but he likes to steal advanced gadgets from villains and then refurbish them to sell to the military. He also tests them in the city, making the city a target for the villains who want their gear back, which is kinda evil if you think about it. He turns to fighting crime after finding a female raider who killed his Green Arrows. The raider was the daughter of Vixen, so Ollie called a backup team. However, they ended up killing his daughter, which turned him towards fighting crime instead of profiting from it. And at 7, JLA, The Nail. Oliver Queen is in a rough spot when it comes to Justice League of America, The Nail. In this universe, Oliver Queen was his own downfall during a fight with the android Amazo, where he ended up becoming indirectly responsible for the death of Hawkman. This incident lost him both his legs and his right arm, and also he lost his left eye due to the injuries sustained by Amazo. This also caused Oliver to resign from the Justice League and start blaming them for his injuries. A while after this, Oliver was really bitter and harbored so much resentment towards the League that he began making claims that the League and all metahumans are secretly aliens conspiring against humanity. He sounds like my dad. This was so uncharacteristic of the hero we all love, but it was his trauma and I'm pretty sure some form of PTSD manifesting in that way, as a way to cope with the loss of his limbs and abilities, which had helped define him up until that point. And at 6, it's Cupid, stupid. Carrie Cutter had appeared in both the comics and the show in the form of her alias Cupid. Carrie was a special ops soldier who worked for a program called Cobalt. During a mission in Georgia, she saw something that really messed her up, so in an effort to face that, she volunteered for a program that would make her fearless. It also turned her emotions up to 11 when it comes to love, making her fall in love really quickly, passionately, and aggressively, never for the better, even if you're into that kind of thing. In the TV show, she was first introduced in Arrow Season 3, Episode 7, where she uses love and pleasure as a way to manipulate people in order to find the one she has, air quotes, fallen for. For the show, she had fallen for Oliver after he saved her from getting killed during Slade Wilson's siege the season prior, hence her archery. You know? Her psychiatrist diagnoses her with having attachment disorder, the inability to form meaningful relationships, as she puts it. She gets away but comes back killing newlyweds because her love got destroyed. She also makes an appearance in the show's Suicide Squad, in love with Deadshot before he dies. Halfway through, number 5, Prometheus. Prometheus is another iconic Green Arrow villain meant to be a dark reflection of him, especially in his Arrow Season 5 appearance, being an even darker version of Deathstroke, who are both villains created by Oliver due to his past actions. In the comics, Prometheus deals a whole load of damage to Green Arrow, both mentally and in the sales, thanks to another comic storyline. In Cry for Justice, a slew of superhero deaths and attacks on heroes are revealed to be the work of Prometheus. In the story, he also ends up taking Roy Harper's arm and killing his daughter in the bomb that went off in Star City. Once Oliver sees this, he sets out on finding Prometheus and killing him. Oliver finds Prometheus and kills him by shooting an arrow between his eyes, and then this leads to Oliver being put on trial for the murder in what is considered one of, if not the worst GA storyline ever. In the show, Prometheus is the son of Justin Claiborne, who Oliver killed during season 1 of the show. They're so alike that Prometheus even gets confused for the Green Arrow during his first attack on a cop outside of the police station. Ballsy move, by the way. This character is a much darker version than even the Dark Archer, killing to spell out names of the original season 1 lists and more. In at 4, Arrowverse. The Arrowverse has been mentioned a lot on this list, not because specific characters only appear there, but because they also make an appearance there. However, the actual Green Arrow from the show is much darker than the hilarious comic we all know from the comics. As the Warp Zone said in their Arrow Season 1 to 5 recap wrap, DC needed to show way more hardcore to make Smallville look like Cupcake Wars, but they couldn't get the right to the Dark Knight, so they settled for a white bread Hawkeye. So they made this character even darker than his comic counterpart in order for him to have more of an impact on screen and to probably make it more realistic. The Arrow, as he was called in Season 1, was not afraid of killing. He would kill anyone who stood in his way and wouldn't hesitate to kill those on his list, even willing to kill himself in order to defeat Malcolm Merlyn. While he did end up getting lighter, the show is was still a much darker tone than the comics or even the animated versions of the Green Arrow that are currently out or that have been out. So that's fitting to be on this list. Plus I love the Arrowverse, so I'm gonna keep talking about it. And at 3, Black Lantern. For those of you who may remember, my first video on the channel was the top 10 Black Lanterns you need to know about. And Oliver Queen wasn't on that list because, well, Swamp Thing was a Black Lantern. That dude is literally the Earth, and he was a Black Lantern. Anyway, first appearing or being resurrected, I guess, in Blackest Night number 5 from January 2010, Oliver was transformed into a Black Lantern during the events of Blackest Night, which saw him attack his former allies, including his son, wife, and sidekick Speedy. During the battle, his son Connor reveals that he never really forgave his father, and Oliver's internal monologue reveals that he hopes his family is okay and that he is disgusted by his actions. He has concerns for those who were his family before death and wishes them well, even though, you know, his body's the one attacking them. The team managed to disable him by freezing him with liquid nitrogen, which is pretty cool if you ask me. What? That joke was not chill? Maybe not. Stay cool, bird boy. And at 2, Deadeye. First appearing in Justice League Quarterly number 8 in September of 1992, Deadeye is a version of Green Arrow from the Antimatter universe. Not much is known about this character, not even his real name. He is only known by the moniker of Deadeye. He is a member of the Crime Syndicate, an evil version of the Justice League from Earth 3, which includes such characters as Johnny Quick, Owlman, Ultraman, Superwoman, The Outsider, Deathstorm, and Power Ring. It's a crazy team and I actually really love the characters. But Deadeye has been in the comics so little that there is hardly any information on him. He could be Oliver Queen, but he could just as easily not be. But with the introduction of the Antimatter universe in the Arrowverse, I would like to see this character make his appearance in that show. Maybe in the next Arrow crossover event. I was hoping they would do Blackest Night, but with Supergirl coming to a close because of Melissa having a kid soon, I don't know if that's gonna happen. Finally, in at number 1, Earth X. Crisis on Earth X was the 4th Arrowverse crossover, where the wedding of Barry Allen and Iris West gets interrupted by a group of from Earth X, an alternate Earth where Germany had won World War II and taken over the world. The crossover featured evil fascist versions of Supergirl and the Green Arrow, and Earth 1's version of Reverse Flash instead of an evil Barry Allen. The evil Green Arrow was equal to Earth 1's Green Arrow, matching him blow for blow, but exploiting the weakness of our Oliver's loved ones. This later came to bite him though, since RGA was able to kill him during the final fight scene when the Earth X version watched his wife explode. Literally. He was married to Overgirl from Earth X, and she literally blew up because her heart was deteriorating, hence why they invaded Earth 1 to begin with, so they could get this Supergirl's heart. Thank God they invaded Earth 1 instead of Supergirl's Earth, right? Like, every hero was on Earth 1. If they had gone to Earth like 37 or whatever Earth she's on, they would have been screwed. I don't think Clark would have been enough to take on a full Earth of NAZIs. I don't know if that word's gonna get censored because of YouTube, so yeah. If it does, that sucks.
Number 10, Facets. An alternate of Starfire appears in the Elseworlds story Facets from the New Teen Titans Annual number 10. In this story, Starfire is being created or given powers by what appears to be beings who I guess call themselves goblins. They are making her for their master, known as Phantasm, to be a guiding light in the coming darkness. Whatever that means. Well, if you read the issue, you learn what it means later. In order to perfect Starfire, she is made to suffer through much pain as they fill her up with Starfire. Because her name is, you know what I mean. Fortunately, she does eventually escape, but unaware of her own strength, she kills people accidentally with her powers. Zap. Later on, she and the rest of the Titans of this world are reunited and forced to fight Raven's demons. And in the end, a dead Nightwing disappears into the cosmos through Phantasm's cloak. Yeah, it's both a dark and weird Elseworlds story. So you should definitely read it, in my mind. I love weird comics. Number 9, Nightstar. Nightstar is the only version we really have of Starfire who is alive in the Kingdom Come alternate universe. She is the daughter of Corey and Dick Grayson. Her mother died when she was very young, so she's basically like the alternate version of her mother's mantle, or like kind of a stand-in for Starfire in this reality. But of course she's also her own person as well, so yes, she is Corey's daughter, she's not explicitly Corey. I hear you. Nightstar does not get along with her father and ends up on the opposite side of him during the whole conflict in Kingdom Come, which divides the supers. While Nightwing fought on the side of Superman, Nightstar, aka Marie Grayson, fought on the side of Batman's outsiders. She managed to survive the nuclear strike, targeting the feuding superheroes, and also managed to save her father, helping to kind of mend their relationship. Still, they continued to then live in a world where many of their superpowered colleagues had perished, which is pretty dark. Number 8, Cleve. Klee would be the closest we'd have to a living alternate Starfire from Earth 2. In her universe, she's the only surviving Tamaranian. She proves how deadly she can be when she arrives on Apokolips, kills a ton of parademons, and frightens the other warriors that she runs into. In the end, Darkseid decides to make her one of his Furies, and Klee realizes if she is to become a Fury, she must kill those she loves most, sacrificing them so that she can be loyal to Darkseid alone by loving only him. That's some dark stuff. But that's Darkseid for you. It's a dark person. Dark place, Apokolips. Lots of fire. Number 7. Darkfire. I mean, come on, does it get darker than that? Well, yes, actually it does. Darkfire may sound like one of the darkest alternates, but it's just mostly his name that gives him that. Darkfire is actually his own character, Corey's brother. But Corey and her brother look so alike, I'm just gonna acknowledge that he's his own character, but I still wanted to count him as an alternate. Ryander is Corey's young brother who has a pretty dark backstory in the sense that he grew up during the climax of the Citadel War on Tamaran, which took place between the people of Citadel and of Tamaran. In the end, a truce was made, and Darkfire's sister, Princess Koriand'r Starfire herself, was given over to the Citadel to do with as they pleased. While Darkfire at least didn't have to suffer that fate, he was sent away to train and would end up fighting against the Citadel for many years alongside the Omega Men. At least that was his original story. Number 6. Koriand'rs. This version of Koriand'r comes to us from the live action show Titans. Here Corey is played by Anna Diop and is still an alien from Tamaran, but who was sent to Earth on a mission. Once her mission was complete, she would then ascend to becoming the new ruling monarch on Tamaran. Her mission? To kill a being known as the Raven, which, you guessed it, is none other than Raven herself here, known as Rachel Roth before she adopted her heroic mantle in Titans. If that's not dark enough, she also tortured men for information, and she aligned herself with a crime boss known as Konstantin Kovar, who she was using to help her complete her mission. That is, of course, until she lost her memory. Number 5. Blackfire. While not being an explicit alternate to Starfire, as she's her own character once more, which I acknowledge and respect, Blackfire is also kind of like the evil version of Starfire herself. Blackfire is Starfire's much more villainous sister. The two sisters look quite similar, although Blackfire has black hair where Starfire's hair is red. Commander went on to become queen of her home world of Tamaran. For a long time, Koriand'r reviled Blackfire because Commander was the one who was believed responsible for her enslavement. That's some pretty evil stuff. While Corey would later forgive her sister and even fight alongside her, she's always been seen as the darker, more sinister sibling in comparison. Number 4. Starofire. Just based on the name, it's implied that Starofire is a combination of both Starfire and the evil, but somewhat adorable, Starro. Starofire is from the alternate universe of Earth 32 and is one of the outlaws of justice. She makes a brief appearance in Flash Forward and looks like a much darker version of her own Starfire, and looks like a much darker version of the Prime Earth Starfire based on her outfit and her villainous expression. However, we unfortunately do not get to learn much more about her. Still, we can assume that she is at the very least some kind of anti-hero on her own planet. Because it's the Outlaws of Justice is a hero group, but also they're kind of mixed with villains, so I'm sure they're somewhat shady over there. Number 3. Dark Multiverse Judas Contract. I love going into the Dark Multiverse because there's always tons of dark, twisted, alternate realities to explore. Like the alternate universe where everything is Lobo. Truly the darkest timeline. In Judas Contract, we witness what would have happened if Terra was inspired to strike out on her own and become her own violent and extremely powerful supervillain. Here she takes the mantle of Gaia and kills all of the Teen Titans and pretty much all of the Justice League too in this reality. We don't get to see much of Corey as a result. She makes a brief appearance and then is killed by Gaia, being forcibly buried in rubble after trying to fight against Gaia's earth-crushing abilities. But she's just not strong enough here. It's pretty crazy. Number 2. Flashpoint. This version of Starfire ends up joining with the alternate Wonder Woman of the Flashpoint timeline, joining her female Furies. However, in this reality, Wonder Woman is evil, and her Amazons are in a war with Atlantis and Aquaman. Starfire is one of the members of her elite team of female warriors, and is by association pretty evil herself. She even has a more villainous look to boot. Sadly, she is killed by her longtime lover from the main continuity, Dick Grayson. Sad. Number 1. Justice League Dark Apokolips War. During the animated film Apokolips War, Starfire ends up joining Darkseid, becoming one of his Furies. Apokolips War takes place in a world where Darkseid has taken over Earth by using creatures called Paradooms, which are created from the combined genetics belonging to Parademons and Doomsday. So yeah, pretty crazy beings. In the end, the Teen Titans, who were Earth's last defense, end up all being either enslaved or killed. Starfire herself thereby is forced to join Darkseid and becomes one of his cyborg furies, conquering other planets out in space. Number 10, 1602. The Matthew Murdock belonging to Neil Gaiman's 1602 alternate Earth of 311 is known as the Bard. He pretends to be a helpless blind singer when really he is a dangerous adventurer who takes on jobs in exchange for large sums of gold. This version of Matthew is from Ireland and got his powers as a young boy when he ventured into a dark cave and discovered a glowing green substance which he tasted to try to figure out what it was. Cause that's what you do when you notice weird glowing substances. The substance gave him a fever and robbed him of his sight, but granted him other enhanced superhuman senses. At one point he threatens to kill King James if he ever attempts to attack Spymaster Sir Nicholas Fury again. Number 9, Old Man Daredevil. In the Marvel 1602 comic, one of the alternate realities that we also get to see into is the one that Captain America came from when he was sent back in time to 1599 Earth 490. It was his being sent back that created Earth 311, the alternate reality that the 1602 comics belong to. On Earth 490, Captain America stood up against the older dictator and president of the United States, Purple Man, who at the time was not just the president but also considered president for life. Other heroes tried to do so as well, but many of them were hunted down and captured, including an elderly Spider-Man and an elderly Daredevil. Both were presumed killed by President Kilgrave, while Captain America was sent back in time because Purple Man didn't even want a trace left of Cap. He wanted to avoid Captain America being made into a martyr, and to have him completely forgotten instead. Number 8, Dare the Terminator. Slade Murdoch is from the Amalgam Universe. She is the combination of Matt Murdock, Daredevil from Marvel, and Slade Wilson, Deathstroke from DC. She was a lawyer who struck out as a vigilante when she felt the system failed to uphold justice. Both her father and her mentor Winterstick took part in her training, and she took up the mantle Dare. Later, she was captured by the crime lord and New Gotham mayor, The Big Question, who experimented on her. It was during this time that she was blinded but gained superhuman senses. The Big Question called her a daredevil and gave her little devil-like horn implants to help her appearance match that nickname. Number 7, MCU Daredevil. The whole feel of the Netflix shows when it came to their depiction of heroes was way darker. In the Daredevil Netflix series, the show really tends to focus on the angle of Daredevil just being a normal dude. He's trained hard almost his entire life and he's a brilliant lawyer, but Matt Murdock is just a human trying to do his best to defend his own borough of New York. The only superhuman thing about him is his senses and how well he is able to see in his own way around him, despite being completely blind. In fact, his blindness is one of his strengths in the series, that and his insane willpower, which is shown through how many times Daredevil gets beaten down but always manages to get back up. Charlie Cox plays the role of Daredevil and Matt Murdock brilliantly in this darker, more gritty live-action reality. Number 6, Exiles. In the 2001 run of Exiles, we meet the Daredevil of Earth 181. We learn that this version of Matt Murdock for some reason works for Wilson Fisk as a hitman. After his adventures with the multiversal Weapon X team, Daredevil ends up being imprisoned in a crystal palace. After being freed though, he ends up back on his own Earth, where we get to see him gleefully return to working for the Kingpin, beating his target bloody in an alley. Wow, that's dark.
Number 5, US Agent. A huge shakeup for Cap came up in a bold 1987 storyline. When a government commission declared that Steve had to do their bidding to continue as Captain America, Steve was obviously resistant because, who says his ideals are necessarily going to line up with theirs? He decided to just quit the whole role altogether, and the commission turned to John Walker to become the new Cap. However, he was much more brutal and short-tempered than our lovable Steve Rogers. Thanks to his power broker enhancements, Walker possesses basically all the same abilities that Steve has, not to mention he is a military-trained fighter and also trained under the Taskmaster at one point to hone his gymnastic and acrobatic skills. A real breaking point for this character is when a group known as the Watchdogs took out his parents, causing Walker to experience extreme levels of grief and to go on a bloody rampage. These bad actions led him to being deemed unworthy of the Captain America name, and he soon after faked his own death and came back as the US Agent. As the US Agent, we have seen Walker as a member of the Dark Avengers, Omega Flight, Jury, and even the Watchdogs as an undercover agent. There is so much more when it comes to this character, so go check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance as the Super Patriot in 1986's Captain America number 323, or just feel free to skip ahead to his time as the US Agent, starting with 1989's Captain America number 354. Number 4, Captain Hydra. You're probably thinking that I'm going to be talking about the time where it was revealed that Captain America was actually an agent for Hydra and the entire fandom just lost their mind when they saw the infamous Hail Hydra panel. Now, I thought it would be way too easy to include that dark version of Captain America and challenge myself to look for some other variants, but don't worry, if we do a part 2, I will definitely include him in that list. Enough with that tangent though, let's get back on track with Leopold Zola of Earth 85,826. Possessing the exact same powers and abilities of his 616 counterpart, aka Nomad, this version of Zola differs from him because he is a spoiled and arrogant brat who does literally whatever he wants. The captain led Hydra's team of Avengers to capture Nomad and Captain America's daughter Ellie in order to end the remnants of the rebel movement which was resisting Hydra's rule in the domain of the Hydra Empire. He pulled no punches when doing this, killing anyone who got in his way, and even broke Nomad's spine during a one-on-one fight between the two. Check out Leopold Zola for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2015's Hail Hydra number 1. Number 3, Anti-Cap. With a name like Anti-Cap, you know this guy is going to be pretty dark. Not a whole lot is known about Anti-Cap, but according to his files, we know that he was enlisted in the Navy after the Oklahoma City bombing. He almost became a SEAL, but didn't pass the psychological test, and as a US Marine, he killed one of the biggest drug dealers around. But that's about it. At some point during his time in the Navy, he agreed to undergo an experiment that would basically make him the Navy's version of Captain America through something called the AVX patch. It worked and gave him similar abilities to Captain America, but only worsened his mental state, leading him to murder an admiral that was overseeing the project. He went AWOL after that, and Captain America and the Falcon were tasked with finding him before he could cause any more damage. After a long search, Captain America found Anti-Cap, and the two battled it out for a while, with Steve coming out on top. Defeated both physically and mentally, Anti-Cap chose to take his own life into his own hands and dropped in front of a moving subway train, ending his own life. Why not check this character out for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2004's Captain America and the Falcon number 1. Number 2, Colonel America aka Zombie Cap. Now I know you're all expecting this one to pop up on this list at some point. Like most of the other heroes from Earth 2149, very little is known about Colonel America's life before the zombie plague, but it can be safely assumed that it is similar to his 616 counterpart, with the only difference being an obvious rank change and the fact that Colonel America served as the President of the United States for almost a full term. During a battle with Sentry, Colonel America was infected with the zombie virus, and he is actually the one responsible for turning Spider-Man after he launched himself into the air and biting him. With an insatiable hunger, Colonel and the rest of the Avengers go on a hunger-fueled rampage. Skip ahead a little bit and we see Rogers alongside other zombies gain cosmic powers after devouring the Silver Surfer, but even the cosmic powers he gained couldn't prevent his death because during a fight with the Red Skull, he just straight up gets his brain scooped out. Fast forward another 40 years and we find out that the Colonel's brain is still very much alive thanks to the zombie virus, and it ends up being transplanted into Black Panther's dead son T'Challa. However, this turned out to be a terrible idea because Colonel America turned into a battle-crazed zombie that couldn't think of anything other than fighting and killing. His final fate was never actually confirmed, but it can be assumed that he died in one of the later battles that ensued between the zombies and the humans. Now, the Zombieverse is probably my favorite Marvel universe out there, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it too, so check out Colonel America in his first appearance in 2007's Marvel Zombies vs. Army of Darkness number 1, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 1, Steve Rogers, Earth 11,326. Still the leader of the Avengers, even in this universe, this Steve Rogers is not the nice guy that we would expect, or at least he doesn't start out that way. With all of the powers and abilities of his 616 counterpart, Captain America of Earth 11,326 was recruited as a part of a team to hunt and kill all mutants. During a mission to the mutant stronghold Fortress X, he succumbed to a deep and primal bloodlust and just killed Mystique because he thought that she was a threat, only to find out she was actually protecting a group of mutant children from the dangers of the world. With her dying breath, she completely changes Cap's outlook on life by questioning if what he was doing was actually right and how he could have let himself go this far. Realizing his mistake, Cap called off the mission and took everything into his own hands, killing the Steel Corps in order to protect the mutant children from any more horrors. Alongside the other members of the Avengers, Cap fought to protect Fortress X but was killed by the Hulk. He redeemed himself in the eyes of the mutants enough to inspire them to continue the fight in his honor though. Now I put this Captain America at the top of this list today because it shows just how truly merciless a Captain America who has lost his values and humanity can be. Check him out for yourself in the Age of X storyline, starting with 2011's Age of X Universe number 1. Number 10, Bruce Banner, Earth 12,091. Now, not a whole lot is known about this alternate universe, but they do have a pretty crazy looking Hulk nonetheless. In this reality, Bruce Banner was mutated into the Hulk by undergoing some gamma radiation experimentation, so pretty standard so far, but his appearance is vastly different than the Hulk that we're familiar with. This Hulk is like an electric green color and is a bit more risque because he doesn't wear any clothes, which is okay, I guess, because he's got kind of, you know, Ken doll in it, if you know what I mean. Not to mention that he has 4 absolutely massive arms, effectively making him twice as strong as any other Hulk. After this transformation, he gained the reputation for destroying spaceships, and any attempts to stop him by Thunderbolt Ross were always thwarted. He attacked the hideout of Barracuda when the Punisher tried to gain information about the 6-fingered hand, and he killed a decent amount of the mercenaries hired to kill the Punisher, but was enraged by the leader's sonic device. The Punisher managed to escape before the Hulk could kill him, which you can assume he could have done very easily. Check out this monstrous Hulk for yourself in his first appearance in 2012's Space Punisher number 2. Number 9. Skulk. Hailing from Earth 9602, the Amalgam Universe, Bruce Banner was a scientist experimenting with radiation, and one day an experiment he was working on went horribly wrong and fused him with the elemental entity known as Solomon Grundy, and he became known as the Skulk. With the powers of the Hulk and Solomon Grundy combined, you can probably figure out for yourself why this would be pretty scary. After a confrontation with Dr. Strange Fate showed Skulk that he could keep the Skulk in his human form with the use of magic. The Skulk agreed to work as an agent for Dr. Strange Fate in return for Strange Fate keeping Skulk in the form of Bruce Banner for most of the time. This version of the Hulk is actually a rather gentle soul because upon finding access, Bruce actually tried to have a conversation with him rather than immediately jumping into battle because he thought that Access seemed like a really lost and lonely child in the world. This didn't last for long though because it did get to the point where he transformed into the Skulk and attacked him with just plain old brute force. Skip ahead a little bit to a mysterious villain attacking the Amalgam Earth city by city, and Lobo the Duck awoke in the ruins of Manhattan and found himself as the last remaining survivor among the heroes. Now the Skulk's body was never actually found among the other heroes, but it can be assumed that he is no longer living. Check out this character for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1996's Doctor Strange Fate number 1. Number 8. The Incredible Thing. In an alternate reality, Earth 295 to be exact, Bruce Banner never actually became the Hulk and mutants rule the world. In an effort to combat them, Bruce, under the order of Thaddeus Ross, is tasked with creating an army of super soldiers. However, all of his efforts fail. Banner moves to Europe not too long after and becomes a member of the Human High Council, the ruling body of the surviving human population. Oddly enough, Banner longed to become a mutant in order to escape being a second-class citizen, and caving into the moral low ground, Banner sold himself to one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse in order to experiment on mutants and eventually himself. The result of the experiment was The Thing, a gray Hulk variant that Banner could revert between at will. Ben Grimm and Sue Storm were the first to encounter the Thing, and Sue shot him in the side of the head. The Thing fled and turned back into Banner, but neither Sue nor Ben connected the two events together. Fast forward a little bit to when Bruce, alongside Tony Stark, is escaping the Earth's orbit, and we see humanity under fire from a bunch of missiles. They were able to destroy all except for one, an adamantium bomb that Bruce had invented himself. So, as the Thing, he jumped out of the spacecraft and diverted the bomb so that no one would have to die from it. Forcibly reverting back to his human form, he fell down to Earth and was captured by Apocalypse. After an unidentified period of time, he revolts against the Alphas and Apocalypse, but sadly this ended in his death. Check out this Bruce Banner for yourself in 1995's X-Universe number 1. Number 7. Infernal Hulk. Are you familiar with Earth 11,638? It is an alternate universe that is seemingly a utopia because Spider-Man's loved ones are still alive, and Bruce Banner finally separated from the Hulk, and Wade Wilson never had to become Deadpool. However, he did end up becoming the villain Deathmask, but we'll just sort of, gloss over that one. After Bruce Banner became Dr. Banner, the Sorcerer Supreme of this universe, he separated himself from the Hulk and banished him to Hell, where he became the Infernal Hulk. When the Bruce Banner of Earth 616 traveled to this universe with Spider-Man and Deadpool, the Infernal Hulk was able to get free from Hell by trading places with the Hulk persona of Earth 616's Banner. He immediately went after Bruce, who was saved by Spider-Man and Deadpool. Together with his counterpart, Spider-Man and Deadpool, the Sorcerer Supreme Banner came up with a plan to defeat the Infernal Hulk once and for all by reversing the banishing spell and then snapping Bruce's neck before the Infernal Hulk could take control of his body. Check out this devilish Hulk for yourself in their first appearance in 2011's Deadpool Annual number 1. Number 6. John Eisenhart. On Earth 928, the alternate Earth that is set in 2099, and it is a vastly different world than we are familiar with because the Age of the Heroes has ended and much of the world is run by violent and evil companies. Head over to Los Angeles and we meet John Eisenhart, the Hulk of 2099. John gained his Hulk-like abilities from the Knights of Banner, a cult that worshipped the original Hulk, who wanted nothing more than to create a new Hulk. Their Gamma gun accidentally fired and hit John, and he was transformed into a 12-foot tall Gamma Beast with razor-sharp claws and fangs, a long tongue, and massive muscles. Hulk 2099 dedicated himself to defending the people from monsters like Draco and became a leader in a rebellion against them. After President Victor Von Doom's takeover of America, John stole a Gamma device from one of Doom's henchmen in order to keep it from Doom himself. Now, this device was similar to the one that granted John the ability to transform into his Hulk-like form in the first place. Draco threatened John with a massive bomb placed directly on the city's fault line if he didn't turn the Gamma device over to him. In the ensuing battle, the bomb detonated and triggered a massive earthquake, and the earthquake set off the Gamma device that resulted in a massive explosion laying waste to the city. John emerged from the rubble, mutated even more so by the radiation emitted from the device. His mutation eventually did stabilize and he returned to his original form just prior to S.H.I.E.L.D. agents arriving in the region. While battling them, John seemed to perish and, well, that's the last that we've seen of him. Give his story a read for yourself in 1993's 2099 Unlimited #1. Number 10, Red Sun Superman. Answer me this, have you ever wondered what would happen if Superman didn't have that good and wholesome upbringing and was raised somewhere else, like, I don't know, let's say the Soviet Union? Well, wonder no longer, because that is exactly what happens in the comic book miniseries Superman Red Sun. Instead of his ship crash landing in Kansas, Superman lands in the Ukraine in the middle of the Cold War. In the story, Superman is raised with the ideals that the Soviet Union instills in him, and the world feels a sense of fear as a superpowered alien is the Soviets' new secret weapon. He still has all the powers you associate with Superman because he is still exposed to the yellow sun. With the passion and sense of justice we've come to expect from Superman, Soviet Superman was so dedicated to his country, which made him incredibly dangerous for the wrong reasons, because he was a living weapon that the Soviets used to spread their power throughout the globe. Over the course of about 20 years, he traveled the world with Wonder Woman, converting other nations and even becoming their new leader. He was a good leader, don't get me wrong, because he is still Superman, it was just for a very bad world. Highly recommend you check out this alternate Superman for yourself, starting with 2003's Superman Red Sun Volume 1, Number 1. Number 9, Ultraman. Similar to our Superman's origin story, this iteration was sent from the planet Krypton to Earth 3. However, it's not really stated why, since Krypton didn't explode in this universe. On his way to Earth 3, he first came into contact with Kryptonite, which started the change in his body that turned him into the superpowered powerhouse that we know. And since then, every time he came in contact with Kryptonite, he only grew stronger. After becoming an adult, he renamed himself Ultraman, and this is where he vastly differs from our Superman because he became a brutal authoritarian and ruthlessly rules his version of the Justice League called the Crime Syndicate, conquering most of the world with their help. After largely conquering most of the world, Ultraman developed a new type of supervision that allowed him to see into the Earth 1 dimension. Seeking an open battle to test their powers after defeating the military forces of their native Earth 3, the Crime Syndicate challenged the combined forces of the Earth 1 Justice League of America and Earth 2 Justice Society of America. Not able to withstand the combined might of two Earth's greatest super beings, the Crime Syndicate was defeated and imprisoned in an extra-dimensional bubble created by the Earth 1 Green Lantern. Ultraman is a perfect example of someone who has all the power but isn't happy. Hailing from an Earth where evil always wins, Ultraman is always looking for something new to conquer, torment, or honestly both. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1964's Justice League of America number 29. Number 8, Overman. Hailing from Earth 10, a universe where the Germans won World War II, we have Overman, the leader of the new Reichman and the Superman of this Earth. Kal-El was sent to Earth 10 as a baby in a ship away from the planet Krypton because it was dying. Pretty standard Superman origin, however, much like the Red Sun Superman, he was raised by the wrong people. Alongside the German forces, Overman conquered the world in, I want to say, less than 20 years, after which he decided to leave the Earth for a while. 3 years later, he returned with a clear head and saw all the damage he helped cause and became an advocate against all of what he once stood for, while still working alongside them for some reason. Eventually, German scientists used Kal-Cells to create a clone of him known as Overgirl that Overman learned to love like family. However, she died not too long after her creation, and that hit him hard. Inconsolable and grief-stricken, Overman leaked some precious information to the freedom fighters that resulted in the demise of the new Reichman and Metropolis. Check out probably one of the saddest Superman stories I've ever heard of, starting with 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook number 1. Number 7, the Eradicator. Existing on New Earth, the Eradicator was an ancient Kryptonian weapon merged with a human body to form the last son of Krypton, an extreme vigilante who surfaced after the death of Superman. The Eradicator was given to Superman while on Warworld, and it began its work again on Earth, creating the Fortress of Solitude and trying to manipulate Superman into becoming the ideal Kryptonian. When it failed, the Eradicator created a new body for itself based on Superman. The Eradicator had all of Superman's memories, even though it wasn't actually the real Superman, but was far more brutal and violent. It didn't actually have the power to absorb solar radiation, so it relied on Superman's body to transfer energy to it. Over the years, it became more compassionate and even fought alongside Superman in a few fights, the most notable being their fight against Cyborg Superman, and even sacrificed itself to save Earth, but it always remained dedicated to preserving Superman and Kryptonian life. In DC's Rebirth continuity, the Eradicator has returned and it's just as dangerous as ever, so why not take a look at the Superman clone story for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1989's Action Comics Annual number 2 all the way to 2011's Action Comics number 901. Number 6, Black Zero. This is actually the third Black Zero. This was an alternate version of Superboy known as Superman 2 from a hyper time stream in which Superman had not returned to life and his clone had been left to fully mature and develop his full Kryptonian powers in addition to some tactile telekinesis. With this new power, he could create a field around himself that made him invulnerable, allowed him to fly, and also move heavy objects, similar to Superman's strength. Superman 2 tried to fight crime, but ended up losing a battle that cost its life, leading to a backlash against human cloning. He decided to rename himself after the pro-cloning organization on Krypton, Black Zero, and fight for clone rights. He used Project Cadmus to kill off most of the world's superheroes and recreated most of them as clones of the originals, but that wasn't enough for him. He entered Hypertime, a cross between a time stream and the multiverse during an era where DC Comics only consisted of one universe, to travel to other realities to fight for clone rights as well. Black Zero was a fanatical and ruthless warrior who was eventually and thankfully stopped by the combined strength of numerous Superboys from across Hypertime. Appearing across only a few issues, this is a short story that is definitely worth a read, so if you feel like it, check out 1999 Superboy Volume 4, number 61 to 64. Number 5, Super Doom. After a trip to Tibet, Clark, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen built a machine that used vibrations to bring thoughts into reality, and the best possible use for it in their eyes was to create a Superman that was a thought-powered redeemer capable of saving the world. Unfortunately, they ended up having to sell the machine to Overcorp, and Overcorp took their Superman idea and twisted it so much that the brutal and toxic Super Doom was born. A self-described killer franchise, Super Doom wasted no time in becoming the preeminent superhuman of its world, and sought out to eliminate any form of competition, meaning he was on the hunt for other Supermen. After ravaging countless parallel planets and butchering numerous Superman and Superman-like adjacent people, it finally tracked down its creators to Earth 23, where it killed Jimmy and mortally wounded Clark. Later, Super Doom was summoned to Prime Earth by an unwilling Lex Luthor as a final doomsday weapon against Superman, and after a brutal struggle, Superman overcame the monster, which, upon defeat, transformed into a bomb that Superman managed to place on the dark side of the moon before detonation, seemingly annihilating Super Doom once and for all. Give the story a read for yourself, starting with 2012's Action Comics Volume 2, number 9. Number 4, Superman Earth 1198. In Superman the Dark Side, the baby Kal-El ship is diverted on its path to Earth and instead lands on the planet Apokolips, home of the Overlord Darkseid. In this version of Superman, Darkseid is the one to raise him, and Superman becomes his loyal and devoted disciple and helps him in the destruction of New Genesis. As well as this, Superman doesn't grow up to wear tights and a cape. Instead, he opts for a menacing black and red armor with a lightning bolt S across his chest. Not only is this Superman powerful, evil, and terrifying, he also has a thing for weapons, using the Apocalyptian sword and Omega Warhead, as well as anything he can get his hands on. Superman in this story is more of a pawn for Darkseid than inherently evil, but much like the others, his actions have horrific consequences. With his direct and indirect help, Darkseid managed to extract the anti-life equation from Superman's cells and subjugated the world and expanded his reach. With Earth by his side and a yellow sun to power him up, Superman was forced to fight Darkseid to end his reign of terror. Highly recommend you check out this 3-issue run for yourself, starting with 1998 Superman Darkseid number 1. Number 3, Cyborg Superman. Now there have been two major characters that have become Cyborg Superman. The first and most famous is the astronaut Hank Henshaw. When a solar flare hit Henshaw's spacecraft during a space experiment, he and his crew started to mutate. The mutation was so strong that once back on Earth, Henshaw's crew, along with his wife, all committed suicide. Before Henshaw's body disintegrates from the solar flare, he is able to upload his mind using NASA equipment. With the help of the birthing matrix that was used to send Superman to Earth, Henshaw creates a cyborg body with all the powers that Superman has. After this, Henshaw finds out that Superman had thrown the Eradicator into the sun, which caused the original solar flare. Blaming Superman for everything, the newly formed Cyborg Superman seeks revenge on the Man of Steel. To destroy the real Superman's reputation, Cyborg Superman tried to use a nuclear bomb to destroy Metropolis. He was defeated because that's what happens when you go up against Superman, but used his powers to inhabit machines to return over and over and over again. once even conquering most of the planet Apokolips. After his ultimate defeat, he was taken in by Sinestro during the Sinestro Corps War, making him even more powerful than ever. Since the New 52 era, Cyborg Superman has been revamped as having been the father of Supergirl, Zor-El, who survived Krypton's destruction only to have been transformed into the villain he is today. Why not give Hank's story a read for yourself, starting with 1990's Adventures of Superman number 466. Number 2, Lord Superman. This alternate Superman doesn't have any roots with comics. He is actually from the Justice League TV series, specifically 2003's episode A Better World, and is one of the first Dark Superman that we've seen in the animated universe. This Superman lost his way in battle with President Lex Luthor after Luthor executed the Flash in front of him, and mocked the Man of Steel for never being able to see things through to their logical conclusion. Superman, overcome with rage, executed Luthor with his heat vision, took over the world with his Justice League's help, and formed the Justice Lord's crime-free regiment. They saw themselves as the world's saviors, and the Terror was a small price to pay to realize their vision. Of course, when they found an alternate Earth, they immediately imagined all the quote-unquote good they could have done there, and Lord Superman's incredible powers would have let him succeed on this new Earth if it weren't for the regular Superman, who managed to defeat the Justice Lord before it was too late. I think the worst thing about Justice Lord Superman is that he truly thought he was doing the right thing, but we all know for a fact that he wasn't. Check out this 2-part episode for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. And finally, number 1, Injustice Superman. Before I dive more into this one, I have to say that I love the Injustice games so much. I remember when I first got the game and I did not put it down until I was finished with the story, so comment below who your go-to character is. In Injustice 1, I'd have to say mine is either Nightwing or Batman, but in Injustice 2, it has to be Green Arrow or Scarecrow. Anyways, sorry about that, let's talk about Injustice Superman. In a storyline amalgamated from diverse comic plots along with the Justice League animated 2-parter, A Better World, that I just talked about, the Joker sadistically fear gasses Superman into killing Lois Lane. Superman responds by putting his open hand straight through the clown's chest and turns the world into a dictatorship-like police state. In the process, he doxes Batman, murders Shazam and Martian Manhunter, converts the Justice League into his personal secret police, and gets his butt kicked by Alfred Pennyworth. He's finally defeated by a still good Superman from another universe who encases him in a red sunlight generating capsule. Now, there have been a few storylines over the years that have revolved around the idea of what would happen if Superman went bad and whether anyone could stop him, and this just proves that the only man who can take down Superman is Superman himself. Why not play the games again for yourself to refresh your memory, or check out 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us number 1. Number 10, Speed Demon. Coming to us from the Amalgam Universe, a parallel universe that is composed of mashups of some of our favorite Marvel and DC characters that was unfortunately destroyed thanks to the cross-multiveral conflict, comes Blaze Allen, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Once a stunt rider working at a carnival, Blaze Allen becomes the Speed Demon following the death of his wife at the hands of the evil Night Spectre. He was convinced by Merlin to bond with the demon known as Etrigan, and from there, the entity known as Speed Demon was born. Granted the abilities of Ghost Rider, including his fiery powers as well as super strength, Speed Demon is not actually all that fast despite his name and lineage. While the character is a formidable fighter and an all-around powerful being, he falls very short in the speed department, especially compared to all the other speedsters. There have been other characters who have taken up this mantle, including both Jay Garrick and Wallace West. However, all of their abilities seem to be similar to the originals. Check out Blaze Allen for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1996's Speed Demon, number 1. Number 9, Deceased Flash. Now a member of the anti-living, Barry Allen, formerly known as the hero The Flash, is exactly what you think he is, a zombified speedster. When the anti-life equation begins spreading worldwide, Barry went into hiding alongside Kid Flash, until they were found by Superman and Green Lantern. Leaving Wally in their more than capable hands, the Flash sped off to the Daily Planet where he encountered an infected Giganta. Thankfully though, she was taken down with a blast to the head from Cyborg. Soon after, we see the Fortress of Solitude turned into a shelter for the uninfected heroes. However, an infected Martian Manhunter was able to make it through, and not only did he kill Lex Luthor by just ripping him in half, he infected the Flash with a scratch to the back as well. Barry immediately ran out of the fortress because he didn't want to hurt or infect anyone else, and it didn't take long for him to become fully infected, and he started attacking the remaining survivors all across the world. He was finally stopped by Superman after the two collided into each other at full force, killing the speedster right then and there, but not before he was able to infect the Man of Steel. Give this storyline a read for yourself, starting with 2019's Deceased, number 1. Number 8, Barry Allen Out of Time. Hailing from a possible future, this iteration of the Flash is a much darker Barry Allen from 20 years in the future. This future Flash first appears in the Flash Annual Volume 4 number 3 as a broken man. Reeling from the death of a close friend and fellow speedster Wally West, Future Flash travels backwards through time on a crusade to murder all the former enemies he deems responsible for West's death, hoping to somehow change the future. His actions only widen a tear in the Speed Force, however, and the once hero ultimately decides to use a present-day Barry Allen's energy to seal the rift, proving his superiority in a one-on-one battle against himself. Because apparently the Flash is like a fine wine and only betters with age, the pair are soon interrupted by the arrival of Wally West. Able to take on both speedsters at once, Future Flash's actions caused the one thing he began his quest to stop: the death of Wally West. Give the storyline a read for yourself, starting with The Flash Annual Volume 4, Number 3, and let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Number 7. The Rival. Real name Edward Clare, the Rival is the arch-enemy of the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick, and is one of the oldest speedsters around. Clarence was a professor at the university Jay Garrick went to and believed that he had the know-how and means to recreate the speed formula that gave Jay Garrick his powers in the first place. He was able to develop a drug derivative of the same formula called Velocity 9, and after taking it himself he gained the powers a speedster would have. However, he found out that they were only temporary. He became the criminal that he is because his findings were rejected by his fellow science peers, and decided then to don a darker version of Jay Garrick's costume and commit crimes under the name The Rival. After losing to the Flash the first time, the Rival resurfaced a couple months later, and during his battle with the Flash, he was somehow able to reach light speed and just vanished and was stuck traveling through the Speed Force until he was pulled out by Johnny Sorrow. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1949's Flash Comics number 104. Number 6. Dark Flash. Walter West is essentially an identical version of Wally West, just from another timeline, with their two histories mirroring each other's up until one certain point. Walter's version of Linda Park, the girlfriend/wife of Wally, is killed during a battle with Cobra. Turning him into a very bitter speedster and eventually the Dark Flash, Walter develops an authoritarian zero-tolerance policy for criminals, going so far as to cruelly maim them if they denied his actions and got in his way. Eventually, Walter learned that the love of his life was still alive and well in another timeline, and he set out to defeat Wally West and completely replace him. Able to easily take on his alternate timeline counterpart, Wally, who is often considered the fastest character to take up the Flash mantle, which further extends the parallel between the two. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1999's Chain Lightning finale, Finish Line. Number 5. Johnny Quick. A member of the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil version of the Justice League hailing from Earth 3, Jonathan Allen is Johnny Quick, the Flash of this universe. After conquering the entirety of Earth 3, the Crime Syndicate of America decided to abandon their Earth to terrorize and take over Earth 1 and 2. It took the combined efforts of the Justice League and the Justice Society of America to stop them, although unfortunately for everyone, that wasn't the end of their reign of terror. Now, Johnny was initially depicted as being slower than the Flash, however he figured out a way to make up for his shortcomings by developing a helmet that vastly increased his top speed, while also deepening his relationship with the Speed Force, making Johnny Quick more than a match for the Flash. Since then, Johnny has shown tremendous command over the Speed Force, defeating countless superheroes in a matter of microseconds in the Forever Evil storyline. It was only after Alexander Luthor, aka Mazza, stole his power that he met his end. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Justice League of America number 29, or feel free to skip ahead to his newer iteration starting with 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23. Number 4. The Red Death. Once the hero of Gotham, Bruce Wayne from Earth -52 was forced to seek more extreme approaches to prevent crime after losing all of his Robins. Coming to the conclusion that he wasn't quite fast enough to fight crime, Bruce set his eyes on the Flash, deeming himself more worthy of the Speed Force than Barry Allen, which is pretty presumptuous, but okay, whatever floats your boat. After defeating Barry, Bruce strapped him to the front of the Batmobile and drove them both into the Speed Force using the power of the Batmobile combined with the Cosmic Treadmill. The two merged together and Batman became the Red Death, using his new powers to kill instead of just stopping crime, much to Barry's dismay as his consciousness was still very much alive in Bruce's head. Like all of the Dark Knights of the multiverse, the Red Death represents one of Batman's fears, this one being losing members of the Bat family and his love for them and regret for those he failed. His dialogue and his Speed Force infection also imply he might represent Batman's fear of old age slowing him down as well. Check him out in his first appearance in 2017's Dark Days, the casting, number 1. Number 3, Reverse Flash. No, we're not talking about Eobard Thawne, we're going to be looking at the second Reverse Flash, Daniel West. Daniel ran away from home at an early age because of his abusive and drunk father, and by the time he was 18, he had fallen into the wrong crowd and was a small-time thug. All he wanted more than anything was to mend his relationship with his sister Iris, but after his first attempt, he was thwarted by the Flash and sent to jail for 5 years. When he got out, he wanted nothing more than to kill his abusive father because he felt that was the only way he could make amends with his sister, and gained his Speed Force powers that allowed him to travel back in time after a monorail crashed and from then on he called himself the Reverse Flash and killed anyone who had a connection to the Speed Force so that he could drain their power. It got to the point where the only two left with a connection to the Speed Force were the Flash and Iris West, and Daniel was able to go back in time to attempt to kill his father. However, it didn't really work out, because his younger self and Iris caught him in the act. He then realized the error of his ways and turned his powers over to the Flash, who set everything right once again. Check out this Reverse Flash for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2012's The Flash, Volume 4, Number 0. Number 2, Black Flash. They say death eventually catches us all, but what happens when you're too fast even for death itself? Well, that's where the Black Flash comes in. Easily one of the most mysterious entities in the DC universe, Black Flash is a symbol of death for speedsters across the multiverse, appearing just before the death of every significant speedster. Able to easily keep pace with the fastest beings in existence, it seems death really is impossible to outrun, even for speedsters. The Black Flash first made an appearance when Wally West seemingly cheated death by using his speedster powers to escape the inevitable. When the Black Flash realized he needed a human host to properly function, he chose Linda Park as his host. After Flash Rebirth brought back Barry Allen from the dead, he also noticed that the Speed Force was changing him, and it was revealed that the Reverse Flash's actions had mutilated the Speed Force and was turning Barry Allen, its avatar, into the Black Flash itself. The entity that could turn any speedster to dust just by touching him. The current host of the Black Flash mantle is Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash. Check out this Horseman of Death for yourself, starting with 1998's The Flash, Volume 2, number 138. Number 1, Godspeed. August Hart was the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash, so while going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. He became the Flash's quote-unquote partner, but in secret. August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got his revenge on who he suspected to be his brother's killer. Godspeed is basically what the Flash would be if Barry Allen had one bad day. The Flash refrains from using his lethal force, but Godspeed doesn't at all. Godspeed's argument is that Central City would have been a much safer place had the Flash shown some bloodlust. He proves this point when he kills Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, who didn't have any speedster powers at the time. Thawne did get his revenge eventually though, because after Barry brings back Thawne via time travel, that Thawne kills August. Man, keeping up with that whole time travel and speedster thing is so tough. Either way, Godspeed is one of the most deadly and dangerous enemies the Flash has ever had to race against. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2016's The Flash Rebirth Volume 2, Number 1. Number 5, Pestilence. In 2005's Cable and Deadpool number 15, we see Deadpool dropped in Earth 5701, while on a search for Cable where the supervillain Apocalypse has conquered New York and then changed 4 superheroes into his horsemen, one being the Spider-Man of this world. Alongside Famine, who's the Blob, Death, who is Archangel, and an alternate Cable known as War, they all serve under Apocalypse and aim to protect him at all costs. Now known as Pestilence, this 4-armed and 4-legged version of Spider-Man is not one you want to get close to, especially when you learn about his poisonous fangs and his hunger for human bones. Check him out for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 4, The Other. In the 2005-2006 storyline of the same title, we see Spider-Man begin a transformation to his wild side. Peter began having these strange symptoms and dreams of Uncle Ben and spiders. Thinking he might be dying, Peter threw himself more and more into his crime fighting, especially against the scientific vampire known as Morlun, as Morlun wreaked havoc by beating Spider-Man so badly that he ended up in the hospital, and also by smacking Mary Jane around. Peter got to the point where he just couldn't take it anymore and reached his limits. In 2006 Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 3, we see Spider-Man pin Morlun down and kill him with a bite to the head. After what we all assume was Peter's death, we see Peter erupt from a cocoon with new powers and a newfound dedication to embracing his spider side that he refers to as The Other. Even though he embraced his dark side for a while, he does eventually come back to his senses and becomes the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man once more. Number 3, Patton Parnell. Definitely one of the scariest looking Spider-Men, Patton Parnell has been described as a sociopathic version of Spider-Man who made the exact opposite decisions that Peter had. Growing up with an abusive uncle, Uncle Ted, Parnell was always a bit of a weird one, as he found joy in experimenting on animals and perversely spying on his next door neighbor Sarah Jane. Like other Spider-Men, Patton was bit by a spider, however, his body's reaction to it was a little bit different. Instead of turning into a superhero, he actually gained the ability to turn into a spider-like monster and started to seek revenge on those who had treated him poorly, starting with his uncle. He eventually leads Sarah Jane to his house and reveals his new form to her, and needless to say, she was terrified and not at all impressed. And then after a bite to the neck, the next morning we see hundreds of baby spiders coming out of Sarah Jane's neck. Thankfully, Parnell doesn't stick around for too long, as just after 3 days of having his power, he is drained of all his life force by Morlun. Check out this twisted story in 2014's Edge of Spider-Verse number 4. Number 2, The Spider. Showcased in the Exiles series, we're introduced to one of the darkest Spider-Men to date. On Earth 15, Peter Parker was a sociopathic mass murderer who was sentenced to 67 consecutive life sentences and merged with the Carnage symbiote before being recruited by the Timebreakers into the Weapon X team. Using none of his powers for good, the Spider joined the other members of the team to try to conquer the Earth instead of actually helping them, finding nothing but joy in killing and torturing. It took a blast from Firestar to end his reign of terror alongside the other rebels. What makes this version of Spider-Man so terrifying is that he's one of the few Spideys who actually keeps the symbiote his entire career. With the symbiote's powers combined with Peter's evil rage, this puts the Spider at the same power level as Carnage at his strongest point, making him a truly frightening foe. Why not check him out for yourself in 2002's Exiles number 12 so you can see just how truly merciless this killer is. Number 1. Zombie Spider-Man. Now, not a whole lot is known about Earth 2149 Peter Parker's life before the zombie apocalypse, but it's presumed that it was similar to his 616 counterpart. On his search for the Necronomicon, the presumed source of the zombie infection, Peter ends up getting bit by Colonel America, who is a zombie at the time, and becomes infected. With his mind still relatively human, he hurries home to try and get his Aunt May and Mary Jane to safety. However, with the virus spreading quickly through his body, he winds up killing and eating them both. Alongside the other superpowered zombies, they ate almost all life on Earth until they ate Galactus, which granted them all the powers of the Power Cosmic, which they used to travel the universe, eating other worlds in their endless search for more food. After 40 years of eating worlds, they finally returned to Earth, still hungry to find Reed Richards' dimensional portal so they could finally continue their quest. However, Spidey noticed that his hunger was completely gone. Regaining his sense of justice, Spidey alongside some other good zombies found themselves locked in a battle with the other zombie heroes, trying their very hardest to convince them that their hunger was also gone and they could become heroes once again. Now, there is a whole lot more to the story of Spider-Man, and I could honestly talk about it for hours. This entire zombie universe is amazing. So if you're interested in hearing the rest of the Spidey's redemption story, why not let me know in the comments below and maybe we'll dedicate an entire video to it. If you want to read the story for yourself, why not check it out in Ultimate Fantastic Four number 22 and Marvel Zombies vs. Army of Darkness number 1.
Number 10. Deadpool Dinosaur. Deadpool Dinosaur is a version of Deadpool that is a T-Rex. The main thing that indicates his Deadpool-ness is that he's wearing a Deadpool mask and is part of the Evil Deadpool Corps. The Evil Deadpool Corps are a group of villainous Deadpools originally led by an alternate Deadpool, Dreadpool. They aim to eliminate all Deadpools across the multiverse. Deadpool works to stop them and annihilate this villainous group in the story Deadpool Kills Deadpool with the help of his own good team of Deadpools, known simply as the Deadpool Corps. Deadpool Dinosaur is accompanied by his own Moon Boy, who looks a lot like Logan in the face if I'm being honest. Is this just me noticing this? This version of Moon Boy also fights from Deadpool Dinosaur's saddle with a big gun. The two are basically an alternate version of Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, with of course some Deadpool mixed in there. Number 9. Deadpool. This version of Deadpool is basically a combination of former evil AIM leader MODOK and Deadpool himself. One can assume he has the brilliant mind of MODOK but also has the brilliant fighting skills of Deadpool, even with his tiny, disproportionate arms. Not only does Deadpool seem to fight with swords, but he also has 2 turret firearms on his head. While MODOK stands for mental organism designed only for killing, Deadpool supposedly stands for destructive engine of assassination, despite panpygoptosis, obsessed with opponent liquidation. Number 8. Venompool. In a story that is continued through various What If issues, we get to meet Venompool. Venompool is an alternate version of Deadpool from the alternate Earth of 90211. Here Deadpool ends up becoming bonded with the Venom symbiote during his time with the Beyonder, following a run-in with Peter Parker, who was bonded with the symbiote at the time. The symbiote leaves a defeated Peter Parker for Deadpool and bonds with him. Later on in his life, this is a path that leads Deadpool to end up killing all the heroes of his universe, whom he does not find attractive. He does let the attractive ones live. I guess that's something, I guess. Following a therapy session with Doc Samson, who this version of Deadpool also promptly kills thereafter, he realizes he needed to be true to who he was. This allowed Venompool to accept that who he was a massive jerk, and prompted him to use a weapon called the Retcon Expungifier to wipe out the entire universe. Basically, he's in the running for being the biggest jerk of all the Deadpool alternates. Number 7. Cesspool. We don't know that much about Cesspool. Like many of the darkest alternates of Deadpool, Cesspool was part of the Evil Deadpool Corps. What we do know of him is that he has a terrifying appearance and mutation. He's completely covered in mouths with a razor-sharp teeth and uses these to try and devour his opponents. Yipes. This is like something straight out of a horror movie. Number 6. Galactipool. This alternate version of Deadpool was too dark for even main continuity Deadpool himself. Galactipool shows up just as we thought the fight was coming to a close between the Deadpool Corps and the evil Deadpool Corps. Galactipool is a combination of Galactus and Deadpool, and Wade wondered where in the heck the evil Deadpool Corps even found an alternate like this Galactus Pool. Fortunately, despite him likely having, I guess, some kind of intense cosmic power, alternate Deadpool, Lady Deadpool, manages to defeat Galactipool using the Deadpool Corps ship, B. Arthur. Sadly, this was the end of B. Rest in peace, B.
Number 5, Revenger Thor. Yeah, it's called the Revengers because I'm getting revenge and you're getting revenge. Do you want revenge? Okay, so that quote was from Thor Ragnarok, but that version of the Revengers doesn't have any connections to Revenger Thor. But I just wanted to put that quote in there because, yeah, it was fun. Alrighty, so Revenger Thor comes from an alternate universe, Earth 10011, also known as the Cancerverse. In that universe, Thor is part of a team called the Revengers. And as you guessed, they are evil. They are basically the evil counterparts of the Avengers, which is kind of cool. They end up getting defeated by Thanos, which is also pretty crazy since they usually end up defeating him. But in this version, or this universe, Thanos is the hero, and he saves the day. 4. Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill, a character that is very popular with fans and long overdue for a live action appearance. Beta Ray Bill is a character that is very popular with fans and long overdue for a live action appearance. If you are not familiar, Beta Ray Bill is an alien who was able to pick up Thor's hammer. No one was expecting it to happen, but it happened. He didn't keep it, obviously, but he did end up getting his own cool hammer. The whole thing started when Nick Fury sent Thor up to investigate a spaceship, and he ran into Beta Ray Bill, and the two of them were like, hey, fight. But during that fight, he picked up Thor's hammer. Now, he was teased in Thor Ragnarok, so maybe that means that the MCU is slowly leading up to an appearance? I mean, only time will tell, guys. Number 3, Zombie Thor. Need I say more? No. Number 2. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, Zombie Thor comes from the Marvel Zombie series, which was written by Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman. It takes place on Earth 2149, and on that Earth, a zombie virus ends up infecting almost all the heroes and villains of the Marvel Universe. Thor is one of those heroes. So, he looked very cool and terrifying at the same time. But, one of the most interesting things about this version is that since he was technically dead, he was no longer worthy of Mjolnir. So, Zombie Thor didn't have it. He ended up getting his own hammer later on, but he didn't have Mjolnir, and that was something that I thought was very, very interesting. Number 2, Venom Thor. Yep, this one is real, like no joke. Venom Thor. Man, just the name is terrifying, because you know Venom Thor is a deadly combo. But, like Rogue Thor and all the other ones, this one happens during one of Marvel's What If stories. What if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? In the story, Venom takes over Spider-Man, but then continues to take him over, and then Hulk. But of course, he doesn't stop there. He's like, maybe I should take over some more heroes. And he decides to take over Thor. Venom takes over Thor and gets all of his powers. I mean, imagine if this happened in the main continuity. Venom would be virtually unstoppable because he retains all of the powers he takes. So he would have the powers of Spider-Man, Hulk, and Thor. Who would be able to stop him? No one. He would just rule the earth forever. Number 1, Unworthy Thor. This is one of the coolest versions of Thor, like ever. The reason he is so different is because this is Thor when he is unworthy of Mjolnir. He has short hair, a massive battle axe, ripped clothes, and one arm. His other arm was chopped off by Malekith and replaced with Black Uru. This look was part of the inspiration for Thor's look in the film Thor Ragnarok, which was freaking amazing. This story really breaks Thor down and shows who he is without the hammer. Honestly, it really works, and stories like this help characters grow. And Thor, or known as Son, learns a lot of valuable lessons during this arc, and becomes a better hero for it. I mean, he even fought Thanos during this comic, and it was pretty damn epic. Thor is just so cool. I can't wait to see where Marvel takes him next.
Number 10, Captain Last. You'll learn pretty early on in this list today that the Captain America legacy isn't always carried on by the most deserving. Sometimes it's taken up by a terrible warlord, and that is exactly what happened in this case. On Earth 13,153, humanity makes its last stand in the only place strong enough to survive, Brooklyn. The former Spider-Man Miles Morales leads the last of civilization into the future against the evil that is still very prevalent in the world. Captain Last is the leader of the One America Army, a group of militant scrappers based in the tri-state area following the Earth's decimation by the germs. Basing himself off of Captain America, Last also gains his powers from a super soldier serum, though it's not really explained when or how, and he wears a costume that resembles Cap's signature look, shield and all. Last and his army attacked a caravan carrying supplies from Jersey City to Brooklyn, but were defeated by Spider-Man and his allies. Somehow they were able to find a way to merge Captain Last with a germ, allowing them to break through Brooklyn's defenses and evade the city. Captain Last sought out and battled Spider-Man, but Miles used his powers of bioelectricity to kill the Captain once and for all. Check out this monstrous Captain for yourself in his first and thankfully last appearance in 2020's Miles Morales The End #1. Number 9. Captain Zealandia. A Captain America alternate hailing from Earth 616, Captain Zealandia is one of Arnim Zola's mutated clones of Captain America that was exposed to negatively charged gamma rays. Captain Zealandia possesses all the powers you associate with Captain America, such as superhuman strength, stamina, and agility, but they are all amped up a notch thanks to the gamma rays that they were exposed to. They also carry around a shield that resembles Captain America's, however it is a different color scheme, is made of an unknown material, and has sharpened edges that make it look kind of like a buzzsaw. This storyline takes place after Steve's return from Dimension 7, a world of mutates created by Zola where Steve had been trapped for 11 years. This storyline takes place after Steve's return from Dimension Z, a world of mutates created by Zola where Steve had been trapped for 11 years. Steve is awoken and tortured both mentally and physically by Captain Zealandia, so much so that Steve gets to a point where he's had enough and just impales Captain Zealandia with a shield. This didn't actually get rid of our Cap variant though, because he later resurfaces as the leader of the Unvengers, a team of mutated clones based on the Avengers including Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor. Check out this scary looking Cap clone for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Captain America Volume 7 Number 4. Number 8. Captain Mexica. From Earth 1519, a reality where the Aztecs had never been conquered, comes a Captain America variant that is pretty freaking scary looking. Not a whole lot is known about Captain Mexica's background, but it is assumed that it's similar to Earth 616's Captain America because they seemingly have the same powers and similar gear. At some point, Captain Mexica found their way to Earth 616 and they were immediately caught and put in stasis by the Alternate Reality Monitoring and Operational Response Agency, or ARMOR for short. After a zombie Morbius was found to be impersonating his mainstream counterpart, he began infecting ARMOR agents left and right, turning them all into zombies. In this process, Captain Mexica was freed from stasis, infected, and began feasting on ARMOR agents as an ever-hungry zombie. After having his fill, he attacked Machine Man, who cut him in half, seemingly killing him. However, it was not confirmed, since he's a zombie and hasn't really made an appearance since. Give this zombie captain story a read for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2009's Marvel Zombies 3 Number 4. Number 7. Steven Rogers, Earth 70,105. In the 5-issue limited series Bullet Points, we are shown an alternate reality where Dr. Erskine is killed the day before implementing the Captain America program. Still very sick and with no other option, Steve volunteered himself for another top secret government project known as Project Iron Man, and I think you know what that means. Steve's body is bonded to a giant suit of armor that resembles the Mark I Iron Man suit, and with this suit he is able to fight for America in World War II. Thanks to this new outer shell, he is able to simulate the powers and abilities that his 616 counterpart gained from the super soldier serum. However, I feel this was a huge sacrifice because his skin was literally grafted to the suit. Years later, he was finally freed from the suit, but that did not last very long because he was forced back into it in order to fight Peter Parker, the Hulk of this universe. Bruce Banner is actually the Spider-Man in this universe. It's a really interesting and smart switch that the writers did, and I really liked it a lot. But anyways, sadly in this fight with Peter, Steve dies because of the sheer strength that the Hulk possesses. Highly recommend you give the storyline a read for yourself, starting with 2007's Bullet Points Number 1. Number 6. Baron Blood. You're probably familiar with John Falsworth, the Baron Blood of Earth 616. You know, the young adult who got turned into a vampire by Dracula himself, and then had his body mutated and altered by German scientists? Good, I'm glad you know who he is because that is not at all who I'm going to be talking about. I am actually talking about Earth 8101's Baron Blood that hails from the Marvel Apes universe. Don't worry though, this Baron still possesses all of the powers and abilities of his 616 counterpart, and he is also said to be at the peak of gorilla physicality. Revealed to be the one who is responsible for the vampire invaders, He ambushed Captain America, took his form, froze him in an iceberg. Continuing to turn other inhabitants of this universe into zombies, he became the leader of the Ape Vengers, which, funnily enough, contained a lot of reformed supervillains. He secretly plotted to enter Earth 616 for further food, and to accomplish this, he killed his world's version of Mr. Fantastic to gain access to tech that would allow him to hop between worlds. During the final battle between the Ape Vengers and the Outcast, Baron Blood wounded Speedball, which forced Gibbon and Fiona to take Speedball with them to Earth 616. However, Baron Blood didn't end up making it too far because he was later killed by Ape X. Check out the Ape Vengers and the Marvel Apes universe for yourself by checking out 2008's Marvel Apes #1.
Number 5, Wolverine Pool. What happens when you take Deadpool and Wolverine and mix them together? You get Wolverine Pool. Wolverine Pool comes from the alternate Earth of 1946. Wolverine Pool is the ultimate Weapon X program weapon. He is a version of Wade Wilson who had adamantium bonded to his skeleton. He belonged to the evil Deadpool Corps and was killed during a fight with the non-evil Deadpool Corps. It is assumed that he, of course, has a healing factor, but not one strong enough to regenerate himself when reduced to just a skeleton, and likely a healing factor that was weaker than both the main continuity Wolverine and the main continuity Deadpool. Number 4, Red Tool. Red Tool is actually not from an alternate Marvel universe, but is actually from DC Comics. Oddly enough, while Marvel's Deadpool was created by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza to be a parody of DC's Deathstroke, DC then decided to themselves parody Marvel's own parody of their character, creating Red Tool, who is a parody of Deadpool. He's a parody of a parody. Still, just because we are stuck in a weird perpetuation of parody doesn't mean that Red Tool has to be a super light and fun character. Although he kind of is that too. Red Tool is dark in the fact that he only fights with tools, including power tools, making his physical conflicts also appear a lot more gruesome than his Marvel counterpart. And he doesn't have a healing factor, instead, he just can't feel pain, due to having a part of his brain removed, which also makes him somehow even more disturbing of a character than Marvel's Deadpool. Pretty impressive, actually. Good job, DC. Number 3, Headpool. Headpool is the version of Deadpool from the Marvel Zombieverse of Earth 2149. He is aptly named Headpool because in the end, that is all that's left of him. A head. But a head who is still very much alive, that is, and would still very much like to eat you. This version of Deadpool was also not confined to just existing in the alternate Earth of Earth 2149. He ended up making his way to Earth 616 while he still had most of his full body actually. He ended up making his way to Earth 616 while he still had mostly his full body actually. He was thought to have been completely decimated during a fight there, but it turns out he survived, but simply had lost the rest of his body and was now just a head. Number 2, Dreadpool. One of the darkest alternates around, Dreadpool is the version of Deadpool who appeared in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. He is from the alternate Earth of 12101, where he was driven even more insane than he already is. A therapist known as Dr. Benjamin Brighton attempted to brainwash Deadpool so he might use him for his own means. However, this failed, and instead ridded Deadpool of his standard inner voices, replacing them with a single voice. This voice in his head seemed fully aware that nothing in the Marvel Universe was actually real, and encouraged Deadpool to free everyone from this fictional prison or fictional reality by killing them all off, which Deadpool then proceeded to do. Basically, Dreadpool is from Deadpool's darkest timeline. Number 1, Evil Deadpool. Evil Deadpool is an alternate Deadpool from the main reality of Earth 616. He is sort of a Franken version of Deadpool, who was created by the deranged and psychotic Dr. Ella Whitby. Ella Whitby accidentally helped to create him from storing bits and pieces of Deadpool's body, which had been lost throughout his life while he fought. She collected these because she was obsessed with Deadpool. She was also madly in love with Wade. Though they were stored in her fridge, they were likely part of her shrine of collectibles of Deadpool. In the end, Deadpool found these parts in her fridge and tossed them out. As they thawed in the garbage bag he disposed of them in, they came to life and rejoined together to create Evil Deadpool. A version of Deadpool that is evil and just an all-around complete jerk for the sake of being one, whose fighting skills rival the real Deadpool and who also has a backwards arm, which actually proves to be surprisingly useful in fights for him.
Number 10, the Super Enemies. Starting off our list today with a Dark Justice League with no comic origins comes the Super Enemies, an alternate universe version of the Super Friends devoted to the cause of deceit, injustice, and terror. The team consists of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Robin, Aquaman, Zan, Jaina, and Gleek. However, they have no morals and are just evil mirrored versions of the Super Friends. In the episode they're featured in, the Super Friends meet these evil duplicates in the Hall of Evil, which is their Hall of Justice. The super enemies frequently taunt the authorities, who are powerless to stop them, although the civilian police are actually equipped to just straight up take them down, as they have kryptonite lasers to stop evil Superman. The Superman of the Super Friends universe first met them when he was mysteriously transported into their universe while trying to stop a volcano from erupting, while their Superman was transported into the Super Friends universe. As Superman tried to escape from these super enemies and the military armed with kryptonite weapons, the evil Superman was transported to the real universe to fight the Super Friends. Superman Prime ended up getting an antimatter flask that switched them back, which was good news for everyone. And then later on, Lex Luthor organized his own Legion of Doom to be the real anti-Justice League, and it had a much better name. Check out the one-off appearance of this evil team in 1979 Super Friends episode Universe of Evil. Number 9. Conglomerate. The Justice League doesn't always have to consist of the same roster. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am a huge Batman and Superman fan, but there is also a smaller and less powerful team called Justice League International. And Mark Waid and Rod Wiggum had them face their evil duplicates in 1992. In the previous story, Booster Gold had just left the JLI to found his own corporate-sponsored team called the Conglomerate. Now that didn't work out too well, and the owner decided to pull new heroes out of another reality to form a new conglomerate of Deadeye, who's an alternate Green Arrow, Fiero, an alternate Fire, Frostbite, aka Ice, Elastaman, aka Elongated Man, Element Man, aka Metamorpho, Scarab, an alternate Blue Beetle, and Slipstream, an alternate Flash. The conglomerate decided to challenge the JLI to a quote-unquote friendly competition that quickly turned violent when they realized the new conglomerate were all from Qward, an evil antimatter world. The JLI managed to get them back into their own world, but it was a very close call to say the least. Check out the first appearance of the conglomerate in 1991's Justice League Quarterly number 1, or feel free to skip ahead to 1992's Justice League Quarterly number 8 for the fight of a lifetime. Number 8. Flashpoint. In an effort to stop his mother's murder, Barry Allen created the Flashpoint timeline, a significantly darker reflection of the main DC universe and one of my favorite DC storylines to date. In this timeline, Thomas Wayne becomes Batman after Bruce is killed instead of him. Wonder Woman is like a tyrannical ruler of the Amazons and is locked in a crazy war with Aquaman because she killed his wife, and Superman is nowhere to be found, which means the Justice League technically doesn't exist, and honestly, what's darker than that? Probably a decent amount because this is only number 8, but anyways. If you're not familiar with this timeline, then I highly recommend you check it out for yourself. It is such a good one. All I'll say is that by the end of the series, several major characters are dead, and then in the expanded universe of the Flashpoint timeline, even more characters are revealed to be dead. It's just nuts. Thankfully, Barry managed to fix things before it was too late, but that wasn't enough to erase the Flashpoint timeline completely. Because of that, the DC universe is still dealing with the events of Flashpoint even to this day. Give it a read for yourself, starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, Number 1. Number 7. The Crime Society. Hailing from Earth 3 comes the Crime Society of America, but not to be confused with the Crime Syndicate of America, who we may or may talk about later on. Consisting of Johnny Quick II, Owlman II, Power Ring, Superwoman, Ultraman, and a few others, this team of villains is basically just evil doppelgangers of the Justice League and the Justice Society. The Crime Society encountered and fought the Challengers, consisting of Donna Troy, Jason Todd, Kyle Rayner, and Bob the Monitor, and the Jokester. After the Challengers and the Jokester escaped to another universe, the Crime Society were offered a place among Monarch's transdimensional army, which they accepted, of course. The Crime Society went on to fight on Earth 51 and battled the Monitors. When Superboy Prime subsequently caused the destruction of Earth 51's reality, it's unknown if any of the Crime Society were able to actually survive that. Now, while we're waiting to hear their fate, why not check out their story for yourself, starting with 2007's 52, Number 52. Number 6. Kingdom Come Justice League. In 1996, Alex Ross and Mark Waid teamed up to create the miniseries Kingdom Come. This miniseries was set in a near future where the traditional heroes of the past came together to stop the brutal superheroes of the new generation. The new Justice League of elderly but still very strong heroes like Superman and Green Lantern set up a prison to hold rogue heroes and supervillains alike. Unfortunately, the Gulag erupted in a riot between metahumans that threatened to destroy the entire world, and that caused, let's just say, a little bit more trouble for these geriatric heroes. In an act of desperation, the United Nations launched several nuclear bombs over the Gulag site. Batman and Wonder Woman deactivated 2 of them, but one of them was still primed and falls over the battlefield. Superman attempts to stop the bomb, but Marvel throws him back and stops the bomb himself, detonating it prematurely over the Gulag, killing a lot of the League, cavalry, and many of the inmates as well. What makes the storyline so dark is that throughout the story, the Justice League struggle to follow their own morals, even as they impose their own brand of justice on a very unhappy world. Batman in particular sided with Lex Luthor to quote-unquote liberate mankind from the Justice League. In the end, Superman saw his failure, but only at the cost of thousands of lives. Check out the entire miniseries for yourself, starting with 1996's Kingdom Come, number 1. Number 5, the Justice Lords. What makes the Justice Lords darker than the other timelines mentioned so far is the fact that the Justice League actually managed to completely rid their world of crime. While an absence of crime would be a positive thing for most, it's actually alluded that this version of the Justice League went to pretty extreme measures in order to accomplish such a feat. Appearing in the Justice League animated series episode A Better World, Lex Luthor has become the President of the United States and decided to just execute the Flash. That didn't really sit well with the Flash's friends, which is why an enraged Superman confronted Luthor in the Oval Office. Realizing he would never reform Luthor and keep him from committing such villainous acts, he incinerated him on the spot with his heat vision. With the President out of the way and a new method devised to deal with villains, the Justice League rechristened themselves the Justice Lords and went about establishing a new world order under their quote-unquote protection. They eventually came into conflict with the Justice League when they tried to instill their totalitarian rule on the other DC universes, but thankfully they were finally stopped by Superman and his pals, which actually included Lex Luthor, who became instrumental in stopping the Justice Lords and stripping them of their power. Check out this episode for yourself in 2003's Justice League Season 2, episode 22 and 23 as well. Number 4, the Injustice League. Back in 1988, we got introduced to a new version of the Justice League known as the Injustice League. This ragtag group consisted entirely of criminals who never actually made it big in their various enterprises, and determined to make it big, they just banded together and became the rather ineffective Injustice League. Major Disaster, Big Stir, Cluemaster, Multi-Man, Clock King, and the Mighty Bruce are what made up the roster. They barely managed to pull off any capers and mostly just got their butts kicked. Oddly enough though, after 2000's Silver Age, the Showcase number 1 came out, it retroactively made 1989's Injustice League the second version of the team. The quote-unquote original team was brought together in the Silver Age by the evil intergalactic Agamemnon, who used Lex Luthor to recruit other villains like Black Manta, Bizarro, and the Joker. This Injustice League was way more effective and even managed to switch minds with the JLA on one occasion. When the Justice League managed to switch back, they erased the memory of the event from the villains' minds completely. Check out these two teams in 1989's Justice League International number 23, or head over to 2000's Silver Age Showcase number 1. Number 3, Injustice Justice League. Now I think everyone can agree that no other timeline has featured more DC character deaths than the Injustice timeline. After the Joker takes virtually everything from Superman, the Man of Steel finally cracks and just kills the Clown Prince of Crime. From there, heroes continue to devolve into their worst selves, with a fair split maintaining their moral codes and principles. In the video game and comic franchise Injustice Gods Among Us, the Justice League still calls themselves by that same name, eventually changing it to the Regime though. But that's about the only similarity between the two universes, because the Injustice universe is about as dark as it can get. Superman loses his cool and just thrusts his hand through the Clown's chest after the Joker destroys Metropolis, killing Lois Lane. As you might imagine, this not only kills the Joker but surprises Batman and everyone else around him. Superman decides he is fed up with the old way of doing things and sets out to create a new world order under his totalitarian rule. Superman reforms the League after opposing Batman and many of his other former friends. In the end, it's actually the Dark Knight who succeeds in recruiting Superman from the regular DC universe, who comes in to defeat his darker alter self. Now if you're not familiar with this storyline, check it out for yourself, starting with 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us number 1, or honestly just head back and play through the games one more time. Number 2, the New Reichman. Ever wonder what would happen if Superman didn't crash land in Kansas and instead he crash landed in, I don't know, Germany? Well, wonder no longer, because on Earth 10 that is the reality. On Earth 10, the Germans used Superman, known as Overman in this universe, to win World War II and basically take over the world. As the champion of Germania and the leader of the New Reichman, Overman is accompanied by Brunhilde, Earth 10's Wonder Woman, Leatherwing aka Batman, Blitzen aka The Flash, The Martian, Martian Manhunter, Underwater Man aka Aquaman, and Overgirl aka Supergirl, who was unfortunately killed in battle. Alongside the German forces, Overman conquered the world in less than 20 years, after which he decided to leave the Earth for a while. 3 years later, he returned with a clear head and saw all of the damage he helped cause and became an advocate against all that he once stood for, well, still working alongside them for some reason. Eventually, German scientists used callus cells to create a clone of him known as Overgirl that Overman loved like family. However, she died not too long after her creation, and this hit him hard. Inconsolable and grief-stricken, Overman leaked some precious information to the Freedom Fighters that resulted in the demise of the new Reichman and Metropolis as well. Check out probably one of the saddest Superman stories I have ever heard, starting with 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, number 1. And number 1, The Crime Syndicate of America. Consisting of Ultraman, Owlman, Superwoman, Johnny Quick, and the Power Ring, the Crime Syndicate of America is the first alternate version of the Justice League to ever come to life following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. That event erased the multiverse but left the Antimatter Universe, also known as the Quardian Universe within DC's continuity. Within the Antimatter Universe, the Crime Syndicate existed as an evil version of our favorite superheroes, only they were far more dastardly than their previous versions. With virtually no one to oppose them, they managed to establish and maintain control over a large portion of their Earth. Eventually they grew bored of their Earth and the Crime Syndicate began kidnapping people from the 52 multiverse matter-based worlds and were visited by our Justice League to retrieve the people from the Justice League Earth that had been kidnapped. Fast forward past some pretty sweet fights and we see Owlman along with Superwoman and Ultraman banished to a prison subdimension while Johnny Quick and the current Power Ring were captured. Highly recommend you check out the storyline for yourself, so check it all out in their first appearance in 2000's JLA Earth number 2. Number 10, Wonder Woman Dark Knight's Death Metal. Now, although this is technically in the main continuity, the Wonder Woman that appears in Dark Knight's Death Metal absolutely deserves a spot on this list today because she is one serious badass. Introduced to us in the first issue of Dark Knight's Death Metal, Wonder Woman alongside Swamp Thing is a guard of the demonic-looking prison that holds any villain that does not want to team up with the Batman Who Laughs. So it would kind of seem like she's working for him, but it's revealed later that is not the case when she just impales and rips the Batman Who Laughs in two with her new awesome-looking weapon, the Chainsaw of Truth. Wonder Woman's whole goal in this storyline is to correct the mistakes that have been made and to set everything back on track by somehow resetting the timeline. Basically, she's the Wonder Woman we all know and love, stuck in one of the darkest and scariest DC storylines to date, and that is why she is starting off our list today. Check her out for yourself, starting with 2020's Dark Knight's Death Metal, Volume 1, Number 1. Number 9, Bizarra. You can probably guess it from the name, but Bizarra is the Bizarro version of Wonder Woman. Now, if you're not familiar with Bizarro, he is basically an incomplete clone of Superman, which means that Bizarra is an incomplete clone of Wonder Woman. She was created using the powers of the Fifth Dimension and is meant to be the evil counterpart to our Wonder Woman, but I think we all know that Bizarro versions of any hero never really get the job done. Even though Bizarra possesses both the Bracelets of Submission and the Lasso of Truth like her counterpart, she's only strong enough to challenge Wonder Woman in a one-on-one duel, and when it comes to brains, oh man, trust me, she does not even come close to Wonder Woman. As a member of the Injustice League of Un-America, Bizarro was one of the many that was captured by Metalo in his attempt to rule over Bizarro World, but was thankfully freed by Bizarro himself. Now, I think my favorite thing about Bizarra and the other Bizarro copies is their way of speaking. She spoke in a very twisted tongue and always meant the opposite of what she said. For example, when she says, "I love you," she actually means, "I hate you." Check her out for yourself in 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, Number 1. Number 8, Brunhilde. Hailing from Earth 10, a universe where many of our favorite heroes have been turned into villainous versions of themselves, comes Valkyrie Brunhilde, the Wonder Woman of this Earth that is based on Norse mythology, as opposed to, the original Greek. On Earth 10, all these superheroes we're familiar with are part of the German army and are believers of fascism, so from that you can probably assume that most of them are pure evil. Brunhilde is a member of the new Reichman alongside other dark iterations of the Justice League members, whose only real goal is to rid the world of the Freedom Fighters and spread their ideals across the land. The new Reichman are, however, taken down pretty much from the inside after Overman began to feel guilty about his past deeds. Honestly, put simply, Brunhilde is an evil version of Wonder Woman that can and will go to any lengths necessary to get the job done. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, Number 1. Number 7, Deceased Wonder Woman. Taking place in the Deceased DC universe, Deceased is a miniseries that follows the aftermath of Cyborg's body being used to carry a version of the anti-life equation that ended up turning the general population into zombies. In this miniseries, we see Wonder Woman become a member of the Unliving, which is basically DC's equivalent of zombies, whose whole purpose is to spread anti-life by either infecting or killing living things. They show very little signs of intelligence, and they still retain the ability to utilize their skill sets, powers, and technologies respectively to a surprisingly effective manner. The Infected have also shown numerous times of coming up with very elaborate strategies and tactical decisions to bypass pockets of resistance and cause as much death and destruction as possible. Our Infected Wonder Woman actually showed that she was able to form coherent and full sentences when she was interrogated by Cyborg, implying that she still has some humanity left in her. However, after being set free, she immediately decapitated Cyborg to preserve any secrets she told him. Honestly, all I have to say is Wonder Woman's strength and skills combined with the mind and body of a zombie makes for a scary hero. So check her out for yourself, starting with 2019's Deceased, number 1. Number 6, Whom God Destroys Wonder Woman. This version of Wonder Woman only showed up in a 4-issue series called Superman and Wonder Woman Who Gods Destroy. This storyline takes place in an alternate world where Europe is still under the control of the Germans, and Lois Lane actually steps up to the plate as the new Wonder Woman in order to protect those around her from the tyrannical ruling of the original Wonder Woman and Superman. Not a whole lot is known about this evil Wonder Woman other than the fact that she betrayed her home in order to obtain more power. And just like the other evil versions of her, her lack of humanity is incredibly evident as she looks down on Lois Lane's Wonder Woman for just being immortal. The story ends with Lois defeating the evil Wonder Woman, and it is revealed that the gods Zeus and Hera were actually playing a game of chess using the world as their chess pieces. And that's why everything is so messed up. Oddly enough though, the story doesn't quite end there because once everyone is defeated, everything seems to be pretty much back to normal. Superman, Lois, and Wonder Woman all decide to live together on Superman's fortress on the moon. Check out this miniseries for yourself, starting with 1997's Superman and Wonder Woman Whom Gods Destroy, number 1. Number 5, Frank Miller's Wonder Woman. Hopefully we all know who Frank Miller is, you know, the writer of The Dark Knight Returns and Daredevil Born Again. Well, Miller also took a crack at the character that is Wonder Woman in his Batman series The Dark Knight Strikes Back. In this series, heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Captain Marvel have been forced to work for the government since their loved ones are being held hostage and are under threat. Superman is even ordered by the president, who turns out to be a computer-generated front for Lex Luthor and Brainiac, to stop Batman. It eventually gets to the point in the story where Superman, Wonder Woman, and their daughter Lara joins forces with Batman once again because they deem his plan to be the only way to get out of this whole mess. Now I'll be honest, this Wonder Woman isn't on this list today because of how dark the story is. It's mostly because this is considered to be one of the worst incarnations of Wonder Woman to date. Now she's definitely the warrior you expect from Wonder Woman, but her cold and quite frankly sexist portrayal in the comics was nothing short of distasteful. It also doesn't help that her humanity was put in question throughout the entirety of the graphic novel. If you feel like you can stomach it, check out this Wonder Woman and this whole series starting with 2002's The Dark Knight Strikes Again, number 1. Number 4, Wonder Woman God of War. Following 2011's Flashpoint event, DC rebooted the entirety of its continuity into the New 52. In the new Wonder Woman, the story of Hippolyta creating Diana from clay is revealed to actually be a lie, and Diana is actually a child of Zeus, and the whole clay bit was a cover story intended to keep Zeus's jealous wife Hera from killing her. Sometime later during her training, Diana became the secret protege of Ares, the god of war, only to have him drop her when she refused to kill for him. Years later, after Diana learned her true origin, she found herself embroiled in the power struggles of her Olympian kin. In the course of one adventure, she had to kill Ares, which made her the new god of war, and although she fought against the role for a while, as the battle against the monstrous firstborn of Zeus heated up, she stepped right into the job. Honestly, who knows what Wonder Woman creator William Marston would have made of this, given that he wrote her as this force of peace and this nemesis of the god of war. He might be happier with the events in DC Rebirth, which implies that the whole, Diana's New 52 adventures didn't actually happen. Number 3, Superwoman. I feel like we all knew this alternate Wonder Woman was going to end up on this list today. Hailing from Earth 3, the Earth that is said to be the birthplace of evil, Superwoman is a renegade Amazon who is also taking on the identity of Lois Lane, depending on the version that we're talking about here. Depending on her origin, she is either from Paradise Island or its antimatter equivalent known as Damnation Island. While there are many versions of her out there, one thing that they all have in common is her sadistic personality and the love triangle she has with her colleagues. Equipped with a lasso of submission, a barbed and much scary looking version of the lasso of truth that forces the captor to not only comply with the user, but also fall in love with them, which she has used a few times to her advantage, if you know what I mean. As a member of the crime syndicate, she helped imprison most of the members of the various Justice Leagues in the Firestorm Matrix and began a reign of terror over the world, eliminating any resistance in their way. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with 1964's Justice League of America number 29, or skip ahead to 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23. Number 2, Injustice Wonder Woman. Easily one of the most dark and evil versions of Wonder Woman out there. Not only did she see Superman's descent into evil before it ever happened, but she also actively encouraged it, practically manipulating the Man of Steel when he was at his worst for her own personal gain. Not only that, but by the events of the original Injustice video game, she had been ruling Paradise Island with an iron fist and showed absolutely no remorse. She served as Superman's right hand and took the place of Lois Lane as his new love interest. However, he clearly showed no love towards her because he was still mourning the loss of his dead wife, who he killed himself. When she is confronted by her mainstream counterpart, the mainstream Wonder Woman reprimands her for blindly following a man who does not feel as much devotion to her as she does to him. And once Wonder Woman is defeated, she is taken by her fellow Amazons to be imprisoned for her role in the regime and is later seen on Kahndaq during the events of Injustice 2 as she has been exiled. Take a look at her story for yourself, starting with 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us #1, or honestly just feel free to replay the games. And finally, #1, Flashpoint Wonder Woman. When the Flash accidentally created Flashpoint as a result of attempting to save his mother, the ripple effects changed the timeline to the worst it's ever been. You know, Batman is Thomas Wayne, Superman is in a government facility, and Wonder Woman is the monarch of the Amazons and currently at war with Atlantis, all because she killed Aquaman's wife, who knew Wonder Woman was having an affair with her husband. With all of the normal powers and accessories that make Wonder Woman a formidable foe, this iteration of Wonder Woman seems to lack the empathy that prevents Diana from absolutely losing it and killing everyone. As the war went on, Aquaman and Wonder Woman forged an alliance to take down a mutual enemy, Batman. As both monarchs send their troops to Batman's lair, the world is erased, killing every single inhabitant. Absolutely cruel and bloodthirsty, this Wonder Woman has something that she shares with her Injustice counterpart: her lack of love, and above all, her sickening lack of humanity. Now, I love the Flashpoint timeline with all of my heart, so why not check it and her out for yourself, starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, #1. Number 10, The Captain. From Earth 616, we meet a not-so-bright man with a fairly dark past, and when I say not bright, I truly mean it because this guy thinks if you hit a leprechaun in the head, it will turn into gold coins. Now, although we don't know his real name, we know that growing up, his mother was an alcoholic, and that is what led him down the path of bar hopping and bar fights. One night while on a long bender, two aliens cross paths with him, and for some reason they think he is worthy of some insane power, and bestow upon him the Messianic Sita Complex, which is the heart star of the space between galaxies. With his newfound powers and goal of turning Brooklyn into a better place, he is recruited by the Next Wave, the anti-terrorist superhero team. He apparently chose the name The Captain because all the other good names are taken, which is very fitting for his character. Sometime later, the Captain leaves Next Wave to live a quieter life, as it turns out he wasn't a huge fan of being a superhero, but when Nova crashes into Earth, he takes the mantle of the Captain once again to defeat the Mole Monster. Thanks to the Heart Star he obtained from those aliens, the Captain is seen with what is described as a generic set of special superhero abilities such as super strength, speed, stamina, durability, and flight. Now, since he doesn't possess many powers you normally associate with Captain Marvel, I put him at the bottom of the list, but don't worry, we have got some great characters coming up. Check out the Captain for yourself in his first appearance in 2006's Next Wave #1. Number 9, Anna Marie. Anna Marie from Earth 9289 is a bit of an interesting character, and honestly I love it. When Rogue touched Miss Marvel to absorb her powers, Carol Danvers got in the way by grabbing onto her arm. Carol's Kree DNA ended up glitching Rogue's powers, and thanks to the prolonged contact, they both absorbed the memories, personality, and abilities of the other. With all the powers of Carol Danvers such as super strength, flight, energy manipulation, and so much more, this made for one frightening mutant Kree hybrid. After getting a serious power boost during their fight in space with Brood, Anna becomes the hero known as Binary in this world. This Rogue and Carol Danvers combination were briefly visited by Carol's counterpart from the Prime Marvel universe using the power of the Reality Stone, since the gem linked her to the wielders of the gem in other realities, with the wielder being Anna Marie in this case for this universe. So check out this hybrid mutant Kree for yourself in her first appearance in 2018's Infinity Countdown Captain Marvel #1. Number 8, Marvin Elwood. Hailing from the Marvel Mangaverse, we have Marvin Elwood, the son of Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel from Earth 2301. On his 13th birthday, Marvin was finally old enough to inherit his father's negabands. However, that was no easy task because they were actually hidden in a volcano of all places, and when he finally got them, this completed his transformation into the newest Captain Marvel. When wearing the negabands, Martin is given super strength and speed, interstellar flight, invulnerability, and so much more. Carrying on from where his father left off, Marvin's first mission was to take down Galactus, and with the help of the Fantastic Four and the Inhumans, who he meets on the way, Marvin is able to take down all the villains that stand in his way, and he eventually succeeds in destroying Galactus' core and saves his world from destruction. However, sometime later, it's not really stated how long it's been, the Hand ends up resurfacing in his world and starts taking out the heroes of Earth 2301, and Marvin is unfortunately one of them. Making his first appearance in 2002's Marvel Mangaverse #1, check out his story for yourself and let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Number 7, number 96. Before the Skrulls sent their other, more well-known spies, they created 97 Marvel sleeper agents, all considered to be failures except for, of course, number 97. Like the other 95 before her, number 96 was considered defective due to her several behavioral and genetic defects that had been accidentally given to her. Even though she is defective, number 96 still possesses these Skrull shape-shifting powers that allow her to transform into basically anything and take on their powers thanks to their unstable molecular structure. After the Skrull invasion on Earth, Mystique accidentally found the warehouse where all the defects were being stored and decided to bring 96 out of her coma so she could manipulate her into killing countless people. Mystique did this by disguising herself as Carol Danvers, which allowed the Mar-Vell clone number 96 to immediately trust her. After a while, 96 came to the realization that she was being manipulated, and this made her go a little bit crazy, and she beat Mystique into a coma. Due to these unstable emotions, she began to overload with radioactive energy, which caused her to detonate like a huge atomic bomb. But thankfully, the real Carol Danvers was able to swoop in and absorb the blast, so there wasn't too much damage done. Check out number 96 for yourself in her first appearance in 2010's Ms. Marvel Volume 2, number 48. Number 6. Monica Rambeau. From our familiar Earth 616, we have Monica Rambeau, the current Spectrum. However, before her time as the new hero, she was known as Captain Marvel. She was once a lieutenant in the New Orleans Harbor Patrol. However, fate came upon her one day when she gained superpowers after being bombarded by extra-dimensional energy that was produced by an energy disruptor weapon created by a criminal scientist. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blast, alter her appearance, fly, and so much more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she befriended many superpowered folks early on and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time, becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after many injuries. Out of respect for Genis-Vell, who we will talk about a little bit later, who is the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble though to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they're working to this day to keep people safe. If you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16.
Number 5. Undead Daredevil. This version of Daredevil comes to us from Earth 666. In this reality, everyone is undead. Here, Daredevil is part of the Undead Avengers, which is led by Brother Voodoo. He offers Captain Britain some blood of an innocent youth in the first few panels of his existence. Braddock, of course, politely refuses that offer. We don't know much about this version of Daredevil as he's only appeared in a few issues of 2010's Secret Avengers, but he looks and seems initially super dark. He himself actually seems to be some kind of demon or devil based on both his appearance and his behavior. Number 4. Daredevil 2099. There are actually two different versions of Daredevil 2099, one which shows up in 2099 AD Genesis. He is Eric Nelson and is believed to be related to Matthew's partner Foggy Nelson, but the other is related to someone far more sinister. In the Marvel Knights line Daredevil 2099 comic, Daredevil is actually Samuel Fisk, the grandson of Wilson Fisk, who wrestles with atoning with his family's criminal past while also being faced with inheriting that legacy as Kingpin. He uses the Daredevil persona to assuage his guilt over the source of the power that he wields as Kingpin. In this reality, Matt Murdock was also killed years ago by his nemesis, Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk. Number 3. Kingpin. In the reality of Earth 65, which is also home to Spider-Gwen, aka Ghost Spider, Matt Murdock, instead of becoming Daredevil, ends up as Wilson Fisk's right-hand man and eventually takes over his role as Kingpin when his boss gets arrested. In this reality, Stick is killed by the Hand and they end up taking in a young Matt Murdock to train in their ways, turning him into a deadly assassin. He still gets a law degree when he returns to the States, but instead of taking up arms against the criminal underworld, he ends up joining it, working for Fisk, climbing the ranks until he becomes his Kingpin's chief advisor. Matt Murdock in this reality is an enemy to Felicia Hardy and Ghost Spider. Number 2. Keeper Murdock. This version of Matthew Murdock is from Age of Apocalypse. Apocalypse took over Earth when Matt was just a child. He was put to work on Apocalypse Island and during his time there saved another human from a falling barrel of toxic waste. This toxic waste ended up granting him the superhuman senses we know him for, but Matt only suspected that the accident was responsible for blinding him, because this all happened around the time that he joined up to be part of the Upstart program, which gave him cybernetic enhancements. Ergo, he thought his abilities were granted granted to him by his enhancements, and by Mikhail Rasputin, one of Apocalypse's horsemen. As such, Murdoch became Rasputin's loyal and obedient servant. After he experienced a fraction of the world's suffering through making physical contact with the mutant empath, Murdoch would learn that his powers did not come from Rasputin, and that in fact, he had been manipulated for years into committing what were evil atrocities. Yeesh. Number 1. Dead Devil. Dead Devil only appeared briefly in a couple of issues. He is mentioned in Exciting X-Patrol and comes to us from the Amalgam Universe. Dead Devil is known as the Man Without Life, and appears to be a combination of Marvel's Daredevil, Matthew Murdock, and DC's Deadman, Boston Brand. Both their names are good old comic book alliteration. We don't know much about Daredevil, but can safely assume he'd have the combined powers of both characters. He is also known as the Man Without Life.
Number 10. Arno Stark. So, there are two versions of Arno Stark. The main one was when he was Tony Stark's long-lost brother, but I'm going to talk about the other one. In this version, Arno was the son of Morgan Stark, who was Tony Stark's cousin on Earth 8410. In this reality, Arno is extremely smart and helps run Stark Industries. He ends up creating his own Iron Man suit and constantly uses it to help himself instead of others. He became a mercenary, killing lots of people, and he even used it to sabotage his business rivals, which is really sneaky. This dude would even kill just innocent people or anyone who didn't like what he was doing, and he would absolutely feel no remorse about it. Number 9. Andros Stark. Andros Stark is from the future and the grandson of, well, yep, Tony Stark. Basically, in the future, Tony Stark was trying to create an AI, Vortex, that was supposed to help protect humanity, but instead it affected computers, took control of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the internet. It then determined that humans were evil, and it tried to wipe all of them out. Does that sound familiar? Like, wasn't Ultron created to help humanity too in the MCU? And why do AIs always turn evil? Anyways, he traveled back to the past and basically tries to kill Tony to stop the future from ever happening. Well, the future ends up changing, but not because he ends up killing Tony. But I mean, if he killed Tony, that would wipe himself out too, right? So you always gotta think about this time travel stuff. You gotta think it through. Number 8. Steel Corpse. In the Age of X comic series, Tony got infected with some sort of virus that causes himself to permanently fuse with his suit. Yeah, it's really crazy. Basically, never being able to take it off. To make matters worse, his suit could function without Tony's will, and it was causing Tony to slowly die, since it was taking him over. Yeah, it's kinda dark. And when the Avengers were on a mission, at one point, the suit allowed an emergency override that was going to allow it to kill mutant children. Nothing Tony would do would be able to stop it, so he told Captain America to save the children, and Captain America shot Tony in the back of the head. Yeah, that was a pretty dark ending. Number 7, the infamous Iron Man. So, Dr. Victor Von Doom becomes Iron Man. Yeah, it's real, and I'm not joking. So, the man who was once evil turned good, kind of, with some help of Mr. Fantastic to help redeem Doom's soul. He does in fact turn good. Stark and Doom become close, but after the Battle of Civil War II, with Captain Marvel defeating and severely injuring Iron Man, Doom decides to become the infamous Iron Man to try to right the wrongs of his past. I know he technically isn't like super evil while he's doing it, but come on, he's Dr. Doom, so you never really know. He's always planning something. Like, it's Dr. Doom. Number 6, the Stark. An alien race. When the Martian Masters invaded Earth for the second time, Tony didn't want his armor or technology to fall into the wrong hands. He feared if they got a hold of it, they would be way too powerful to handle, so he launched all of his technology into space. Unfortunately, a few years later, the very rocket holding all of Tony's technology landed on an alien planet. This alien race didn't know what to make of this rocket. They were quite primitive. They started experimenting with the technology and learning everything they could about what was in the rocket. They even named themselves and their planet the Stark. I mean, that's dedication. With this new technology and armor, they were able to harness and they were able to conquer other worlds.
Number 5. Bruce Banner, Earth 95-91. In the Marvel Universe, scientific accidents tend to lead to fabulous powers. However, in the real world, a scientific accident typically leads to serious injury or even death. After all, if a regular person were caught in the explosion of a gamma bomb, they definitely wouldn't gain green skin and super strength. Odds are they would just get probably really sick and die. With that in mind, let's meet Bruce Banner from the miniseries Ruins. Written by Warren Ellis, Ruins is a dystopian twist on the Marvel Universe, where everything that can and does go wrong goes wrong. In this twist on the classic origin story, Rick Jones is a morphine addict that wandered into the testing site of a gamma bomb. The heroic Bruce Banner rushes to save him and is caught in the blast of the bomb, but instead of becoming the Jade Giant, Bruce Banner is consumed with a mess of green tumors which tear Banner apart from the inside out. Much like the Peter Parker of this universe, Banner is currently believed to be held captive by the CIA for research purposes. Give the storyline a read for yourself in 1995's Ruins #1. It answers a lot of questions that I personally didn't know I wanted the answers to. Number 4. Hulk Earth 2081. After a war which ended in a violent nuclear holocaust that wiped out all life on Earth, wanting to get away from the few remaining survivors, would return to the Gamma Cave in New Mexico, where he'd seal himself off with a boulder. Many years later, Bruce would free himself from his imprisonment by a recorder, who was sent to record the demise of humanity at the request of a number of races. Though Bruce at first assumed they wanted to learn from humanity's mistakes, the recorder then informed him that they just wanted to make sure that they were all actually dead. Though Bruce at first refused to believe that everyone was dead, asking if it was some kind of joke, he soon came to accept it. He would then ask the recorder if he was going to kill him as well to, be sure. And the recorder then asked Bruce if he wanted to die, to which Bruce then responded, no, why would I want that? Bruce spent the next several years wandering across the ruins of the old cities trying to remember what he could of the old world. Later, Bruce suffered a painful heart attack, and how much his punishment resembles that of Prometheus, the last Titan, condemned to stay forever alive even while animals devoured him. As he died, the Hulk's persona arose in his mind. Banner would plead with the Hulk, begging him to simply let go of his conflicts, claiming that they were going to a paradise where all their dead friends were, where they could be happy. Hulk threw away his suggestion thinking it was a trick, and because in his eyes, friends had always betrayed him. With Banner completely gone, the Hulk was left completely alone in an empty world. Check out this one-shot storyline in 2002's Incredible Hulk, The End. Number 3, Zombie Hulk. That's right, it's Jack talking about the Zombieverse once again, my big favorite. In the world of Marvel Zombies, the Hulk is the hungriest one there is. After an unnamed hero driven by the hunger crashes on Earth and infects the Avengers with a zombie virus, the world spirals into a zombie apocalypse. Once valiant heroes resort to stomach-churning acts to fulfill their craving for human flesh, and the world becomes a battle for the strongest for scarce resources. A roaming band of zombies composed of, or I guess decomposed since they're zombies, of former heroes such as Spider-Man and Wolverine, kill and eat their way across the planet with a zombified Hulk serving as the Twisted Team's muscle. The group eventually crossed paths with the Silver Surfer, who was subsequently brutally killed by the Hulk and eaten by the group, imbuing the zombies with the cosmic power, allowing the former heroes to take to the stars to eat their way across the galaxy. 40 years later, Hulk returns to the Earth to find a colony of human survivors in New York, known as New Wakanda. After Giant Man declared a plan to create a breeding program to have food for eternity, Spider-Man and Luke Cage rebelled and fought Tony and the others. A force field was activated, protecting Black Panther's stronghold and the survivors, but sealed Gladiator and an unconscious Bruce Banner inside and cut Luke Cage in half. Hulk eventually escapes, and after eating Reynolds, Hulk transformed back into Bruce and voluntarily was eaten by the zombies so that he could cause no more damage to anyone. You all already know that this is one of my favorite universes, so check out Zombie Hulk for yourself, starting with his first appearance in Marvel Zombies Dead Days #1. Number 2, Maestro. While the Hulk has traditionally served as a tragic anti-hero, the supervillain known as the Maestro served as a reminder that the Hulk is really only one bad day away from becoming the most dangerous foe mankind has ever encountered. This alternate future version of the Hulk hails from a Earth ravaged by nuclear war. Driven mad by the death of his friends and from continued exposure to radiation, the Hulk christens himself the Maestro and appoints himself the ruler of this war-torn dystopia. Retaining the intelligence of Bruce Banner, but with the enhanced strength brought on from the radiation, the Maestro rules unopposed, splitting his time between torturing those who have crossed him and admiring his trophy room filled with the weapons and costumes of his fallen comrades. When the modern day Hulk is sent forward in time, he ends up clashing with his future self, eventually triumphing over the cocky Maestro. While the Maestro hails from a possible future, the Hulk lives in constant fear that one bad move could put him on the path to becoming this tyrannical ruler. Fast forward through some pretty cool events that you should definitely read for yourself, and we see the Maestro go up against Logan, who unsheathed his claws and just decapitates him. Give the story a read for yourself, starting with 2017's Old Man Logan Volume 2, number 25. And number 1, Pappy Banner. This version makes me so uncomfortable it's not even funny. So similar to his 616 counterpart, Bruce Banner of Earth 21,923 began as a hero, or as much of a hero that the Hulk can be. No one really knows how or why or when, but Bruce Banner had a very drastic shift in personality and became a villain, many believing it to be probably because of the prolonged exposure to radiation. When the villains took over in this alternate world, Banner joined in on the hero slaughter, eliminating Thor and so many others. Banner later took over a large portion of California and Nevada as his own and named it Hulkland. He also made the decision to mate with his first cousin She-Hulk and sired a group of inbred Hulks called the Hulk Gang. Through intimidation alone, they forced people living there to pay rent or face having their property taken and even death. One of the people that was extorted was Logan, who had become a pacifist at the time. Then one day, the Hulk Gang killed Logan's family, causing him to abandon his pacifist beliefs. And in anger, Logan killed almost the entire Hulk Gang and its leader, Pappy Banner. Understand why this Hulk makes me so uncomfortable? If you feel like you've got it in you, check out Pappy Banner for yourself in this first appearance in 2015's Old Man Logan #4.